All right. It's been a long time, right? Been too long. But we're back. Better than ever. My hair's better. Check it out. I got that ironic nerd cut going on. Honestly, I kind of have a bit of a, not bedhead, we're going to call it home head. Yeah, I just don't feel like doing my hair. It doesn't matter. So we're going to be watching Pang Burn debate between Destiny and Dinesh D'Souza as soon as my camera wants to actually focus. That'd be kind of nice. Okay, there we go. I got a gunplay kit. It's the MG Master Grade Strike Gundam. I've been in a bit of a Gundam kick lately, and I want to put up some shelving behind here actually to have some like props to show off. But check it out so far. Look how big this box is. Right, look how huge that box is. And then look how small this little thing that comes out of it is. All these pieces, right, take up a lot of space. It's like empty space. There's like atoms in a molecule. But once you put it together, it all just kind of condenses down. Either way, though, it's pretty cool. Pretty freaking cool. I don't know if any of you guys are into Gundam. Curious. If you guys want to drop a comment. What's your favorite Gundam? What's your favorite Gundam series? You know, are you more of a fan of like Macross or Evangelion or any of those other mecha anime? Code Geass? I don't know how you say it. But yeah, without further ado, look at this bad boy. Look at him. Dude, I need this. I need to turn off the auto. I need to turn off the auto thingamabobber. I need to turn off the auto focus. There we go. Hopefully that's better. Okay. Yeah, look at this. Look at this shit. Look at this bad boy. Look at him. I think the Strike Gundam is one of the best Gundam designs. Look how sexy this thing is. Look at him. He's fucking cool. Look at that shit. I just think for like a standard ass Gundam, like a very prototypical Gundam, you got like the prototypical coloring. It's like the general purpose style Gundam. I just think it's like one of the best Gundam designs. And look, I know it's a popular Gundam design. Obviously, it's like the main character's Gundam out of Gundam Seed, which is the most like, or not most, but one of the most popular Gundam series. But still, I feel like it gets like years later, people don't really talk about it anymore, or people will talk about the Strike Freedom, which is like the Gundam that he gets upgraded to, right? But you know, sometimes simplicity is the way to go. I feel like the Strike Freedom's got a little bit too much going on. It's trying to do too much. Let's look this up real fast. Strike Freedom. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a little much, I think. It's got a little too much going on. Actually, I mean, this one looks pretty good. I don't know if it's just because the modeler did a good job detailing it. That one actually looks pretty good. But yeah, in general, I just think it's got a little bit too much going on. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, when it comes to design, some people have the impulse of just like adding on more shit, and they think it'll get better if you just add on more shit. But there's a sophistication to just doing enough. And I feel like the Strike Gundam is just perfect for doing just enough, you know? It's got like your classic Gundam look. It looks like what it was set out to be, which for those of you that aren't massive nerds like I am, the original Gundam series, right? You got your RX-82. Did I have that name right? 78. RX-78 by Mazda. And so if you look at the RX-78 and then you look at the Strike Gundam, you could see there's very much a shared design going on. Very much the same colors. Granted, most like the main Gundams for most shows, like the one that the protagonists have, do kind of follow a very similar like color palette and stuff. But the Strike is very much it's supposed to be, Gundam Seed, the series that it's in, is supposed to be almost like a reimagining of the original Gundam show. So the Strike Gundam is supposed to be like a modern version of the original Gundam. So it's supposed to be kind of that general purpose prototypical Gundam, and I feel like it just does it so well. I think the design is just magnifique. Is that how you say it? The other one I really like from that show is actually that one has a lot of good designs, but I don't want to spend too much time on this. The Astray Gundam. Look at this thing. It's a freaking samurai Gundam, dude. How fucking cool is that guy? Alright. So anyways, yeah, I'm going to be putting it together while we're watching this Pang Burn debate between Destiny and Dinesh D'Souza. Might be interesting. Maybe at some point we'll go back and we'll watch the debates between Christopher Hitchens and Dinesh D'Souza. They went on a tour at one point in time where I watched those debates. I've already seen them before, and they went around the country doing the same debate. And honestly, they just kind of touched on the same points every single time in like every city that they did the debate in. So it's a little redundant, but I get it. It's basically like an opportunity for them to show off their talking points, their rebuttals to each other, but like all over the country. Um, I do watch Destiny stream. I know some leftists will be mad at me for that. I know people think he's like a pedophile and a rapist. The details of that case are a little bit more nuanced than that. From what I understand, he was sharing, explicit material of partners that he's been with. But it's also my understanding that this was something that him and his partners were both kind of doing. So the girl that he was sharing, explicit videos of, she was also sharing those videos to her partners as well. And I think in general, obviously, I feel like this probably should go without saying, but it's probably worth mentioning. If you're a young person, if you're getting involved in, sexual activity with other people, if you're recording it, I mean, just know, like, stuff that you upload on the internet, you might as well consider it as being there for forever. And you always got to consider that whoever you share that stuff to, they may be irresponsible with it. They may show it to other people. It's maybe not just a good idea. And you also probably want to really have like a conversation with the other person about whether or not you're allowed to share that material with other people. A lot of things when it comes to relationships and dating and sex sometimes is like you kind of leave it up to convention, you leave it up to like things that are unsaid, you leave it up to like implied consent and everything. But there's some things that you do with relationships and sex that you probably want to be really explicitly clear about, because things like this are going to happen, right? So there's that element of it. I think he was irresponsible in that regard, but it seems like they were both kind of engaged in that behavior, and he just happened to be the one that shared it to the wrong person, right? The other element of it is the whole pedophilia angle. From what I understand, from what it seems like from the case details, is that he thought this person was of age. He was actually being catfished. There was, I guess the girl's boyfriend was sharing her nudes around and making money off of it, and posing as her, right? And so, yeah, all in all, he didn't really know this person was underage, and they weren't really underage. It's just that the boyfriend had shared pictures, I think, that were from a time when she was underage, but at this period in time, she is of age. All of that to say, like, it's kind of in the weeds. It's kind of pointless to get in. I mean, he has culpability, he has responsibility, in my view, for being irresponsible to sharing that material, for the aforementioned reasons that I mentioned. Whether or not the other person, the other party, is also guilty of that doesn't really matter, right? You're responsible for what you're in control of. But with all that said, I don't really think that he's actually a pedophile. I don't see evidence of that. It doesn't seem like he was actually trying to engage in revenge porn. It seemed like he fucked up. But it is a fuck up, right? I just want to get all that out of the way because, I review his videos, I review his debates. I think that he is probably, at this moment, probably the best debater on like the left of center. And I think even if you don't like him as a person, you should pay attention to his debate tactics, to his debate style, to the arguments that he uses. He is very rigorous with his research in a way that a lot of people on the left or even the right are not good at. I know he prepared a lot for this debate, and I don't think Dinesh was prepared for it in the same regard, so I think he's going to probably wallop him here. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's get into it. So, let me get the video started. By the way, these are the tools of the trade.
Wasn't that a lie? Wasn't that a lie though? When he held up the sign, didn't he lie to the American
Got
public,
these
you and me and everybody else
to cut the pieces out with,
the tariffs that every other country has on us?
and then an X-Acto knife to cut the little nubs off to make it clean. The kit that I got came with some files, which is nice. Not pedophiles, but just regular files. I'm reluctant to use them because I feel like I'll wind up actually scratching it. I'm trying to get the nubs off as cleanly as possible without having to use the file. And then I have these markers, which I was going to use to kind of detail some of the lines on the Gundam, which are kind of hard to see because it's so small. But I noticed that like the nice modelers that you see online who post their model kits, like they will actually like fill in the details. I think a lot of them will like repaint it with like custom paint. Gunplay model. So like to give an example of a really well done one. Like, okay, look at this, right? This looks like, it looks like they did a little detailing here, but this is like the standard. Oh my god. Gunplay model before and after detail. Okay, yeah, so like this is a good example, right? Oh, god damn it. So the picture on the left is before they add in like the little details and the stickers and everything, right? It looks cool. But look at the one on the right. Look at how much more detail it is. Look at like how much more clearly like the little like lines on these vents right here, or like the lines on the little V-wing on the front. Some of the little dots, on the armor. These little like hatch points or whatever. Like it looks a little bit better. It looks a little bit cooler. And so I wanted to do that with the marker. Holy crap. This one has a lot of detail. But like I'm so nervous. I don't have like a surgeon's hand at all. And these things are so small. It's easy for me to like overrun with the marker and like just mark it in areas where it's not supposed to be. So I've been meaning to look into that, like watch a tutorial online on how to do it appropriately. It's possible, okay? It's very much possible that you could just fill in like the little details with the marker and then just wipe away the excess. But I need to make sure that that's the case before I commit myself to doing that and like totally ruin my model. Oh yeah, and then I also, just because I'm excited, I want to show off. I also got the Wing Zero Gundam version Ka. So Wing Gundam is a lot of people's like first Gundam series from back in the day. When I went back and watched it as an adult, the writing's actually kind of sucky. It's kind of terrible. It's kind of silly, and it's just a lot of like waste of time and filler and shit. I need to fix this video. This keeps. Oh, it keeps doing the autofocus. Oh, it's because I didn't apply it. Okay, there we go. But like the Gundam designs are pretty cool. So I have fond memories of the Gundam designs. Like some of the first Gundams that I was aware of as a kid. This is a really cool style, actually. So I've seen this online. This is where it looks crazy, right? You look at this and the one on the right looks like it's 2D. It looks like a cartoon. I swear to God that's 3D. It's just a matter of how they like paint it. They paint it with like matte colors and they do like the shadowing on the panels and everything, and it makes it look 2D. I wouldn't want to do it that style. I just think it's super kind of cool and interesting to look at. Uh, this is a really good. Well, no, not really. No, that's okay. You get the idea. Anyways, let's watch this debate.
I do know it. I didn't admit it. I was giving a simplified answer to somebody who found out they just found out what frac servers are making was.
Uh-oh, they're fighting.
Please welcome to the stage, Dinesh D'Souza and Destiny.
Girl's name, by the way. Hey, what the hell?
How you doing tonight?
Hold on a second. I just realized the video. Oh, now the video wants to show up. Okay.
I'm good.
So I think we were given pretty broad leeway over, I guess, what to chat about tonight, insofar as
what to chat
Trump
about
and MAGA and the current state of the U.S. and kind of like where we've come, where we're going in relation to that. Do you have any strong thoughts you want to start us off with, or do you want me to just get right into it?
Well, my heart's fine.
I'm only 40. Ignoring your heart helps.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so I don't know how much you know about me, but I've been kind of like a YouTube political commentator, influencer guy for maybe about 10 years. I followed with great detail a lot of the political, factual, legal, whatever stuff going on with both sides, especially over the past 5 or 6 years. And one of the most kind of troubling things that I've seen develop is we are totally and completely separated in terms of factual reality, in terms of where like the left is living and where MAGA is living. And I mean, my argument is that I would say the conservatives and MAGA, and even people in positions like yours, have contributed really heavily towards that like deliberate muddying of the record, so that people aren't aware of what's actually happening in this country. And I guess like the first event, I guess, or thing I would kind of like to center on is I'm curious what your understanding is of like the Mar-a-Lago documents case for the classified information that Trump.
right now. I'm building the arms, by the way.
I'm happy to get into it, but before we do, if I can explore the idea you just mentioned a moment ago about alternative realities. I assume what you're saying is that the left lives in a certain type of a bubble, but it's a reality-based bubble. The right lives in a bubble that is fake and not reality-based. And so, according to you, one half of the country is essentially deluded, and the other half of the country is sane. See, I think this is...
My perspective on this would be that the left, like the actual left, not the center, not liberals, not people left of center, but the actual left, like socialist. I think that there are particular topics that they're a little bit, deluded on, but I think for the most part they're a little bit more, academically rigorous or a little bit more logical. They are kind of like your average person. There are things that they believe that may be a little bit exaggerated, maybe a little bit off the course, but when it comes to the right in the United States, it's not even close. The right is absolutely like far off the deep end into delusion. And I think the reason that they are, and I think this has been the case for decades, is in order to maintain the worldview that they have, despite, new information, science, the empirical evidence, of reality, they have to invent like new conspiracies, new alternative explanations for why their ideas don't really work out.
This is a very poor way to try to conceptualize politics in general. It's the reason it's a poor way is that if you look at any political divide, particularly the really severe political divides, we go back, for example, to 1860, you could take the view that, which was the view of the South, Lincoln was a moron, Lincoln is a dictator, Lincoln's an idiot, and the Republicans in the North make no sense at all. Or you could take the opposite view, that everyone in the South is a moron, they're living in a bubble, they don't understand reality, and therefore one side is completely right and the other side is completely wrong. To me, the reason this is a very poor way to comprehend reality is that it requires you ultimately to believe that virtually one half of the entire country lives in delusion. Democracy would make no sense if this were truly the case.
Okay, so there's two things I want to say on this. The first is, you know, reality does not split itself such that it is split down the middle of any particular ideological or political faction in a given place and time. Reality is what reality is. Doesn't matter, like, I use the example often of like 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? 2 plus 2 equals 4, obviously in like Euclidean geometry. Base 10, whatever you want to call it. But if you had two political factions and one was saying 2 plus 2 equals 4, the other was saying 2 plus 2 equals 5, 2 plus 2 does not equal like 4.5. It's not like both sides have like a compelling argument. It's not like both sides have a point. No, one side is just wrong. And a lot of times that's just kind of how things work out. Now, there are times, of course, where, there's two factions, maybe more than two factions they both have a point. That does happen. But that's not always the case. And oftentimes people use that as a cop-out. It's called the middle ground fallacy. It's this idea that, if you have two opposing views, the truth must be somewhere in the middle, or kind of like this idea that, both sides must have some sort of reasonable, position. But it doesn't really work out that way. It's kind of like a lazy way of thinking. It's like a shortcut for actually having to do the dirty work of actually figuring out who's right or wrong. So that's the first thing I want to say. The other thing that I wanted to say, hold on, let me refresh my memory here.
In reality, the complex thing to do, particularly when there is a divide, and I think this is what we have to...
Oh, that he was saying that that concept that one side has more of a monopoly on truth and the other is a denial of democracy. Not really. The point of democracy is that you have different people with different interests, right? Having different interests isn't the same as having different perceptions of reality. We could have the same perception of reality, but you and I might live a different lifestyle. We might have different jobs, and so there's different interests that we have. But nothing about that has to do with us living in different realities. So that's the first part. The second part is the point of democracy isn't that, everybody has has a good opinion and everybody's opinion's equally valid. The point of democracy is that we don't want to put a politician or a leader in charge of determining who is right or wrong on that, right? We want to give the people the opportunity to kind of check and balance each other, because we don't have an infallible authority to point to that is always going to be right, that can wield the awesome power of the state to determine who's right or wrong. We don't want to give that power to a person. That's why. It's not because literally everybody in the population has an opinion and all their opinions are literally equally valid. It's that we can't trust to give a politician the authority to determine that and to make it so that other people can't express their opposition to that. And then from kind of like a liberalism, rationalism, scientific revolution perspective, we always want to be open to other people having different perspective, different ideas, thinking, even having the possibility of thinking something that's incorrect or wrong, because, you know, and this idea gets abused sometimes, but throughout history, throughout the scientific process, there are people who had ideas, who had theories that at the time were unpopular, were considered incorrect, but as time went on and people looked into it more, they discovered that that person was actually correct. Take Galileo for example, right? And so we always want to leave room for that. That idea gets abused, however, because people will abuse that to mean any idea is valid, any idea is a good idea, any dissent is good dissent. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a waste of fucking time. But again, the whole thing is that we can't trust one authority to decide that for the rest of society and make it illegal to have that challenge. If you have the good ideas, if you have the best ideas, ideally, the good ideas, the best ideas should be able to debunk the bad ones. Now, whether or not people will recognize that debunking is a separate story. But that's why we have debates like this, so that people, and if you can actually follow the logic of the debate, you should be able to tell like who has the facts on their side and who doesn't. Anyways.
To work toward, and it'd be really interesting if we did that this debate, is if I can advance a theory about Trump that explains not just the 75 million people or so who voted for him, but also the 71 million or so who voted against him. And if I can account for both, and similarly, I would demand of you the same thing. You advance a theory that is a little more sophisticated than simply saying everybody who votes for Trump is a dummy, or they're...
This is part of that kind of middle ground fallacy mindset that I was talking about. And the reality is that Dinesh doesn't even believe in this. Dinesh doesn't believe that the opposition has legitimate arguments. This is a thing that people do where they'll use that kind of like both sides narrative to insulate themselves from criticism, but they won't use that both sides narrative when they're attacking the opposition. Dinesh D'Souza's career is built around trying to prove the opposition wrong, trying to prove the opposition to be crazy, trying to, blah, 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 blah. But when the criticism is directed at him, then it flips to, well, you should respect my opinion because, everybody has some, legitimate idea and, you shouldn't just dismiss my ideas kind of thing. But in reality, it doesn't really function that way.
Listening to other dummies and swallowing their dumb stuff, this does not do justice to our fellow citizens. So I'm just objecting to this framing of reality. We can discuss specific aspects of reality, and I'm happy to start where you...
Which, by the way, I mean, another aspect of this that I think about sometimes is kind of the Jordan Peterson grift and what a lot of these types have gone down, which is like they'll simultaneously, and I know Dinesh isn't necessarily doing that here, but he's kind of pointing in that direction of like engaging in a bit of postmodernism where no narrative is necessarily correct. Every narrative is wrong or it's right depending on the perspective you're coming from. But then in other instances, when they're criticizing the left or whatever, they will call the left postmodern. And so I think that's something to kind of keep in mind, keep in the back of your mind there.
You want, and then I'll take you where I want to go. But I'd like you to comment, first of all, if you agree with me that each of us needs...
And again, I mean, just to reiterate, I find this whole debate tactic, this talking point, to be like incredibly. Number one, it's dishonest, but number two, I find it to be super fucking cowardly and kind of bitch made. It's like you don't actually believe this. When you're communicating to your audience, when you're making your movies, you're not framing it as, oh, both sides have an interesting point, and we shouldn't discount the things that the liberals and the left and the Democrats are saying. No, it's liberals and left are dumb and they're stupid and they don't know what they're talking about and they don't, respect the traditions and blah, 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 right? If that's your position, just fucking own it. I hate the shit that they do when you actually put them in front of another person who's going to disagree with them. Then they retreat to this sheepish, like, oh, can't we all get along? I'll respect your opinion, you respect mine. I have some interesting ideas, like, you should don't discount what I have to say. I think in the good spirit of things, like you should respect each other's opinions, right? And then you go back to when you're talking to your audience, the left is stupid, the left is crazy, the left is un-American, blah, blah, blah. Like, nah, fuck you, bro. Say what you actually believe.
To advance tonight a theory that is good enough, not just to feed the prejudices of the people on our own side, which may be the majority of the audience here, but genuinely.
And here's an interesting, like, logical dilemma here, so to speak, is the prejudices of both sides. If you're unwilling to call a spade, if you're unwilling to say like one thing is right or wrong, then how do you actually address prejudices? Because if everybody's opinion is valid, everybody has a good opinion, then prejudicial opinions are valid by that token, right? You have to be able to actually make a definitive declarative statement on something at some point.
Accounts for the other side.
So I would agree, but I would disagree that a genuine accounting for both sides requires you to admit or requires you to concede that both sides have a similar factual foundation.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Sometimes when you go to the hospital, sometimes you get diagnosed with a really bad disease. Sometimes the prognosis is it's untreatable. I would be uncomfortable if the doctor told me, well, we're looking at two different diagnoses, but this one is really bad, so we're just going to favor the other one instead. Unfortunately, that's not how
Maybe we start calling this like quantum politics. It's like quantum particles, occupying a superposition of different, states at one time or whatever. Like, this might go over some people's heads or whatever, but this politics of like, oh, everybody's right, every position. No, like, the truth can't lie in like a million different places at one time. It just doesn't work that way.
The real world works. It might be that at times in our history, there are certain sides of our country that are deluded. Now, you used the word dummy. I would say they're not stupid. I think that the capacity for even an ordinary person that, a pretentious liberal or some online guy might say, oh, this guy is an idiot. They're not stupid. Like,
I don't know if this is where he's going to go with this, by the way, but one of the things I think about is that, so human beings are highly intelligent species. One of the downsides to that intelligence is that we're really good and we're really creative at creating rationales for ourselves. There's a whole like branch of study where you talk about different cognitive distortions that people have, things like the halo effect, negativity biases, things of that nature. The halo effect, or I mentioned the halo effects, the anchoring effect, right? If we want something to be true, if we have what you would call motivated reasoning, we have a conclusion we want to arrive at, we have something that we want to be true. Human beings are really fucking good at figuring out ways to convince themselves of that and ignoring kind of evidence to the contrary or engaging in cognitive biases that allow them to kind of cherry pick information or oversample information or over exaggerate or whatever. Anyways, let's move on here.
A tremendous capacity for a ton of information, but I would argue that there has been an entire conservative media apparatus that has been aimed at engaging in the delusion of these people for the purposes of trying to make the unappealing appealing or the indefensible defensible. And that's the thing that I'm kind of attacking. Like, is half the country deluded? I would say right now, to a large extent, yes, but that's not because they're stupid, and it's not by accident, it's by design. And I think part of what I would really like to dig into is part of it is not even being able to agree fundamentally on like things that are factually true. You brought up that north-south divide.
Here, let's do this. I want you guys to be able to see this gunplay work that I'm doing. I guess I can't really get my own face in there, huh? You know what? Here, fuck them. Let's see. I think that's probably a good, healthy medium, right? I think you'll at least be able to see my hands. Okay.
The difference that you were talking about there was one of legal perspective, was a conceptual perspective difference.
How small that shit is.
States have the right to secede from the union. How much right does an individual state have over the federal government? That same debate taking place today, it would be somebody saying in the South, oh, we don't even have slaves. All of the people here live equally. And, people in the North saying...
Do you know what's really fun? Making a website on.
you know, in the South, they literally torture these people and throw them in the river for fun, and they don't even use them for work, right? That's the level of, assuming both sides are being deluded, right? That's the level of delusion that we're on today. We don't have disagreements in law or disagreements in concept or idea or narrative about the country. It's like very foundational disagreements on things that we shouldn't have that much of a factual disagreement on.
Well, so I take it that what you're saying is that in the Civil War, there were genuinely intelligent people on both sides, and they actually disagreed about what kind of America they wanted. They disagreed about their economic interests, they disagreed about on constitutional interpretation, they disagreed about whether they wanted to retain the status quo or go into a new type of America. Now, I would argue that we're having very much that exact same kind of fundamental debate right now. Let's just take, for example, the phrase, make America great again. Bit of a cliche, grant, but I would say that the implicit in that is a big idea. That there was an America that we lived in. You could say it's the America of the 50s, the America of 1965, the America of 1980. You can kind of pick your own.
The America of reduced civil rights. The further back you go, the less civil rights people have. That's kind of an inescapable reality of what they're saying. They don't really get pushed on this enough, but that is the reality, right? Is that, and that's the reason why people have had issues with that phrase for such a long time. The further back you go into history, the less civil rights people have. Minorities are keenly aware of this when they hear that kind of rhetoric. Like, bro, I don't want to. If you want to make America greater than it is right now, that's fine. I don't think people would have an issue with that. But when you say make America great again, that implies that there was a previous time period that you think is better than the time period now. And for most minorities in the country, that is absolutely not the case. So what they're hearing, and I think that it's manifesting itself, I think they're right to hear this, is that you want to roll back protections for minorities, you want to roll back rights for them, which indeed is what you see. I mean, the Trump administration, the MAGA, groups, they've rolled back abortion rights for women. They're rolling back protections for trans people. They're currently trying to, actually like legitimately go after people in the United States simply for advocating for, trans rights and stuff like that, which to me seems like a clear violation of the First Amendment. But good luck stopping these people. Good luck getting through to them. So, anyways, let's see what else he has to say on this.
But the things worked better in this country before, in the past. We have messed up. We have become more polarized, more hateful, more violent. Our goals have begun to pull further apart. I would argue that in the Reagan years, for example, the debates were not so much about goals, but about means. We all agreed that America, if you were to take a poll in 1980 or the early 80s and ask Americans, do you think America should be strong, prosperous? Do you think we should have law and order? Do you think America
this shit's so stupid, and I hate the way conservatives talk about this. Like, oh, should we have law and order? What country in the entire fucking world doesn't have law and order? Well, I mean, there are countries that don't, right? But the vast majority of countries and societies throughout all of history have had law and order. It's just a question of what are the laws for that particular country. Should we have like a safe and prosperous country? Like, who the fuck do you think disagrees with that? Does Dinesh actually believe that his opposition doesn't think that we should have laws, that we shouldn't have order? Does he actually think his opposition thinks that we shouldn't have prosperity? I understand having disagreements over your ideology, what kind of government you want, everything. That's fine. I mean, it's fine, but it's not that your opposition literally doesn't want laws and they don't want order and they don't want prosperity. That's fucking stupid. It's you either just lying to your audience, or B, you don't have like the confidence in yourself to actually contend with what the opposition is actually putting forth. So you just straw man them in the most like cartoonish, stupid way possible.
Should be an example to the world. Do you think that most people, have given the chance, who want to come here, you get yes, 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 and yes. Now you might disagree if we create a prosperous pie. how should that pie be shared? The argument was about that. But on the need for prosperity, on the principles of the founding, no disagreement about goals. Now, we are in America where we can't agree about goals. And I would say that one half of the country, my half, Trump's half, we think that there's a better America we want to go back to. You don't. You want to take us into some progressive utopia.
So yeah, I mean, at least here he's being honest. I don't know if he intended to or intended the implications of that honesty, but they believe that the country was better during a previous time. During a previous time. But the obvious question there is, why would you want to go to a previous time where you had less civil rights, when you had less rights? Why would you want to do that? Why would that be better for America? It might be better for a subsection of America, but obviously it's not going to be better for everybody.
So right there, this is hardly a disagreement about facts. I mean, I guess it could be a disagreement about facts if you want to argue the facts of what life was like in 1980 or what the GDP was. I'm happy to discuss that.
And like, I see this a lot on right-wing media. They try to push like the 80s as like the go-to. But their policy position, their policy platform is not the 80s. Policy platform looks more like the 1940s or the 1950s or something, sometimes even the 1920s. Shit, sometimes even pre-Civil War. So like the 1980s, I think we had Roe v. Wade in the 1980s, right? It's not the 1980s that they want. They want something further back than even that.
But I guess what I'm really saying is it is a
what they want from the 80s is like the cheesy preppy bullshit from the 80s. That's it. They want fucking Top Gun from the 80s. Top Gun is not the policy. Top Gun is not everybody's lived experience. It's a fucking movie. You know what I mean? What are the fucking Breakfast Club? I mean, the Breakfast Club even had like Rebels and stuff like that. But in general, I mean, this shit looks kind of like cheesy, corny, and fucking quaint and preppy. You got the preppy jock dude, and you got whatever the fuck this is. What else? Is the other one Breakfast at Tiffany's? Am I tripping? Why is all this shit like breakfast stuff? Well, I guess this is probably further back, right? Audrey Hepburn. But like, yeah, they want like this cherry-picked rosy vision of the 1980s that was all preppy. And what they ignore, by the way, is, because I doubt that they really want this, is what's that movie? Labyrinth? That's not how you spell it, but that's okay. 1980s? The Labyrinth? Like, they're not talking about this, even though the 80s, if you look at like the music videos and some of the culture, some of that shit was fucking gay as fuck. I don't mean that in a bad way, because I don't mind like queer stuff. I don't care, but like, they're not talking about this. They just conveniently ignore that there was a lot of this kind of like queer. You had like glam rock from the 80s, right? Like, they're not talking about this. We all know that, right? This is bullshit. They're talking about like preppy shit from the 80s, preppy 80s. Which, by the way, is like, if you're gonna pick something out of the 80s, why pick like the most boring, like cheesy, fucking gooberish shit possible out of the 80s? No, thank you. I'm good.
conflict of visions. We want a society.
You know what they're actually talking about from the 80s? This is really what it is. Here's what it is. What they're saying is they don't want any of those modern woke Gundams. They want this good old-fashioned, bulky, big-headed. Hold on a second. Gundam goofy animation. Some of the original Gundam animation is hilarious. Look at this. Look at this shit. Look at this dude's head. It's interesting because when you look at the Gundam franchise over the years, after the success of the initial show, like everything else that they released, like the animation was top quality for the generations that they were in. Like they led the industry. But the very first Gundam has fucking hilarious animation. Look at this dude's arms. This actually isn't so bad. Why did they use this as an example? What's wrong with this scene? Oh my god, hold on, I gotta look up something real fast. Char running around? I don't know what to look for. No, that's not. Zaku? Sneaking. Oh man, there's a scene from the original Gundam where Char is like the main antagonist. He's like sneaking around in a military base. And it's like the goofiest shit imaginable. You have like this mobile suit and he's just like, you just see him like pop out of a corner and start running around, and then he pops out of another corner and like scurries around. It's hilarious. Oh, come on. There's gotta be. Damn it. I'm not gonna be able to find. I don't even know what the fuck to look for. That's okay.
Which immigrants come to assimilate. We want a society in which
This triggers the fuck out of me as an American, and it should trigger every American. I don't want to hear any fucking American talking about assimilation. That's like the number one thing. Like the number one thing you're supposed to assimilate to as an American is that we don't assimilate as Americans. We're rebellious. We have freedom. We have freedom of religion. We have freedom of speech. Like the idea that we're supposed to assimilate is like fundamentally, absolutely fundamentally un-American. And it tells me that these people have not assimilated to America. They have not assimilated to our values. They have not assimilated to our culture, our history, our tradition, what's codified in the Constitution. The Constitution, the rights that we have, the trajectory of our country over time is all about not having to assimilate. It's about being able to follow whatever religion you want, to have the ideas that we want. And by the way, they talk out of both sides of their fucking mouth when they talk about this shit. Because on the one hand, they'll complain all day long about social media is banning them and it's silencing their speech, and they'll say like the Democrats expect you to, you have to think the way that they do. And then out of the other fucking side of their mouth, they'll talk about assimilation. Well, which is it? The reality is that they care about political correctness, they care about ideological conformity, they care about censorship when it's affecting them and their ideas and their ideology. But when they're in power, when they're in control, they want everybody else to assimilate to the way that they think, the way that they talk, the way that they dress, so on and so forth.
affirming your identity takes a subordinate role to our identity as Americans. We want a society in which free market.
What is the identity of an American? And I really invite you guys to think about this question, to ponder it, to even do a little bit of reading about history if you have to. What part of American culture are people supposed to assimilate to? Are they supposed to assimilate to the culture of California? Are they supposed to assimilate to the culture of Arkansas, of Louisiana, of New York, of Philadelphia, of New Mexico, of Arizona? The United States, and I don't mean this as an exaggeration. I'm not just saying this because I'm liberal-minded and everything. This is actually just the true history of the United States. The United States has never, ever, not even from its founding, it's never had a single culture to assimilate to. The 13 colonies were distinct. They didn't even have communication with each other when they were first established. A lot of the colonies were formed because they were fleeing Europe, because they were part of a community, sometimes a religious sect, that was ostracized by the country they came from. So they came from a situation where they weren't allowed, like they weren't assimilating to what the society they came from wanted them to assimilate to. They moved to the United States so they can have the freedom to operate the way that they wanted to. The 13 colonies were distinct. They were not in communication with each other when they first formed. They developed their own cultures independently. They came from different parts of Europe. They came from different religious sects. And they were intermingling with thousands of Native American tribes, which themselves were distinct. Even the Native Americans before the colonists arrived were culturally distinct. There wasn't one culture within North America for the Native Americans. There wasn't one culture for the United States. I mean, consider this: the United States, what was it, 50 years after its founding? Okay, actually a little bit longer than that, right? 1961, I think, is when the Civil War started. So about 100 years after its founding, had a civil war. Why did it have that civil war if it was all one culture? This is the question that you need to ask people whenever they bring this up. If the United States was all one culture and everybody was assimilated to the same thing, why did we have a civil war shortly after the United States formed? That civil war precipitated because there were lingering tensions, lingering disagreements between the different states that came from colonies. When the Constitution was ratified, they talk a lot about the compromises that they made, something like the Three-Fifths Compromise. Not a good compromise, by the way, but it was a compromise. And there was the Electoral College itself was a compromise. These were things because the founders didn't all agree with each other, first of all, but especially between the North and the South. The North and the South had very big political disagreements at the founding of the country. And in order to, form a singular country out of that, they had to make compromises with each other. The idea that the United States has one single culture to assimilate to, that it's ever had one single culture to assimilate to, is bullshit. And it's something that conservatives are trying to force on the rest of the country. The country has been split between conservatism and liberalism for a long time. The coast versus the inland areas, rural versus urban, right? Segregationists versus, desegregationists, so on and so forth. What conservatives are trying to do with this assimilation narrative is they are trying to decide for the entire rest of the country that their ideas, their values, those ideas are the ones that the rest of America has to assimilate to. And from an outsider's perspective, if you're a foreigner, you may not understand this. You may not realize this from like the internal debates that happen within the United States. You might hear conservatives talk about assimilation to the United States, and you don't even question it, right? Oh, I guess there must be a culture to the United States, and they have a point, and there's like this tradition. What you don't understand is that the conservatives are pushing that narrative to decide for everybody else, all the rest of Americans who disagree with them, half of the country, right? Half of the country does not agree with them or share their culture or share their values, but they're deciding that they get to define for the rest of. Why the fuck do they get to decide for the rest of the Americans that live in this country what American values are, what American culture is, what everybody else is supposed to assimilate to? Do they have a larger population than us? No. Do they have some kind of, traditional tie to the values of the country over time that we don't? Not really, right? If you look at the long history of the United States, there's been divisions in our politics for a very long time, right? It's not like conservatives have had a monopoly on it at all. They are trying to, when they say assimilate, they're trying to win the culture war by default, by making it codified in law or some sort of like expectation when people come in here. They will accuse the left, they'll accuse liberals of trying to import immigrants in to change the culture, change the politics of the country. The reality is that they're saying that because they're projecting. They view immigration as a way to enforce their cultural norms. They see immigration as a tool for them to push their politics. They want the immigrants that come in to abide by their values, their politics, so on and so forth, so that they can increase their numbers and then dominate the political system in the United States.
It's the engine to prosperity. We want a society in which we recognize that the world is made up of very dangerous people, and sometimes you have to.
He's talking about himself and his movement, by the way.
Smash in a few heads in order to protect your own interests. We want to live in a society where there's the rule of law, and if you come here illegally, there's every right to send you home. There's no such thing as a good lawbreaker or a bad lawbreaker any more than there's such a thing as good discrimination and bad discrimination. So I've just articulated several, and I could keep going, principles. This has nothing to do with whether Trump had a bag of documents in Mar-a-Lago. It is a conflict of visions.
Of course he doesn't want to talk about that, right?
denying that. Either that or you just agree right now that all the principles I've articulated are yours as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would say exactly that. The issue that I have with the more abstract, high-level conceptual conversations is that everybody agrees with these things. That
You do?
people should, yeah, of course, people should be here relatively, legally as far as you can be. People should be here
As far as you can be. What is it? This is kind of like saying I favor law breaking. I don't favor law breaking unless it's
Sure, I say as far as you can be because some immigration stuff is hazy. So, for instance, sometimes conservatives seem like they're okay with asylum seekers, like they suddenly are with South Africans who are white. Other times they seem like they don't believe in asylum seeking at all. So I'm cutting out a little bit of on the edge here for presidential things like TPS, temporary protected status, things like DACA. For the most part, broadly speaking, I largely agree that everybody should be here in this legal process.
I'm putting together a Gundam while I'm watching this, by the way. Here's an arm.
Laws, people get speeding tickets. Obviously, you shouldn't be shot for this. But broadly speaking, everything you.
This is a good line of argumentation. I engage in it when I'm arguing these points. Is yes, illegal immigration is illegal. There's a thing that conservatives try to do with, illegal immigrants have broken the law. They're here illegally, therefore they have no rights. They shouldn't have due process. They shouldn't have representation. We should be able to do whatever we want with them. The counter argument to bring up is basically the concept in legal theory of proportionality. And here's how you challenge them. Okay, in your mind, if someone breaks a law, then they have no rights. We should be able to do whatever we want with them. So if someone jaywalks, they should face a death penalty. Obviously, the answer to something like that is, well, no, right? The punishment should fit the crime. Okay, so then take that idea and now apply it to illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants, their crime is that they're here illegally. That's not ideal. That's not how they should be doing things, right? They should be here. They should go through the legal process. Yeah, 100%, right? But what is the severity of the crime here? Some people on the right might try to say, well, if people here are illegally, they could be committing murder. They blah, 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 blah. All right. We have laws against murder. If someone commits murder and they're a legal immigrant, they should face the penalties for murder just like a citizen would. Oh, they might steal and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, if they steal, we have laws against stealing. The mere act of crossing the border illegally itself, just by itself, it's not the most serious thing in the world. If they cross the border illegally and they're trafficking drugs or they're sex trafficking or they're murdering, killing people, then absolutely you should do something about that. Absolutely, they should face the penalties that anyone else would face if they're murdering or they're stealing or they're trafficking drugs or children for sex crimes, right? But conservatives will do this thing where they try to imply that the mere act of just crossing the border illegally is tantamount to people sex trafficking, drug trafficking, murdering, so on and so forth. The majority of illegal immigrants, as we know from the stats, they're not committing crime. They're committing crime at a lower rate than the native, U.S. population. They're not trafficking drugs. A lot of people don't know this. The majority of drug trafficking, the overwhelming majority, is from U.S. citizens because the drug cartels know that U.S. citizens have an easier time crossing the border of the drugs than illegal immigrants would, or the immigrants in general would. Most of them are here, and I mean the right kind of admits this. Most of them are here just doing jobs. They're contributing to the GDP. That is true. The GDP is increased because of them being here. I'm not making that up. That's true. They're net tax contributors. The right tries to push this idea that they are coming here and just leeching off the system. The reality is that they pay more into the system than they take out, so they're actually helping subsidize Americans. That's true, by the way. So what is the great crime that they're doing? That they cross the border illegally, but otherwise they're increasing our economy. They're helping fund our systems. They're not committing crimes. They're not trafficking drugs. So the big crime that they committed that justifies rounding them up without due process, brutalizing them, tearing their families apart, setting them to be tortured and killed, to conservatives, they think that's rational, is simply that they crossed the border illegally, but otherwise they're kind of just contributing to society. That's insane. It's fucking stupid and it's insane.
You say everybody agrees with. But the issue is that when we have these high-level conceptual disagreements, say, for instance, we should have a president who doesn't commit crimes, and then we have a president who has clearly
Alright,
committed
I'm
crimes,
missing a
and one
goddamn
side
step
sees
here.
that
Where
very
the fuck is
plainly,
this
and the
piece
other
at?
side screams lawfare. That's not true. There
Oh.
is a factual distinction there. That's not a difference of ideology or a difference of vision. It's a difference of understanding factually of what's in the record. And the unfortunate thing is we're not talking about complicated physics or chemistry or biology. It's very simple facts. If you can read a simple indictment, you can see how things are laid out. And it should be a thing that 95% of the population can grasp and understand. Like, for instance, that Donald Trump took documents from the White House that he didn't have authorization to keep. He showed them to multiple people at Mar-a-Lago. He refused to cooperate first with the National Archives and Records Administration and then with the FBI. And then eventually his home was raided. Some documents were never recovered. The whole time, he was in the complete and total wrong in multiple levels, but the right refused to acknowledge this, screamed lawfare over and over again, and then we push them on things like, don't you think it's good to have like a rule of law? They appeal to these high-level concepts like, well, freedom and the past was good and all this, and it's like, well, we can't talk about any particular instances of anything happening. It's a pointless conversation.
Well, I find that this habit is hardly confined to the right.
This is a cop-out. Right. Let's shift perspective again. He's not taking ownership that the right absolutely did, kind of obfuscate what was going on with the documents case and refuses to acknowledge that that was blatantly and clearly illegal. And he's just going to shift to, well, what about other people? What about this group? What about that? What about what this person did? And if you're doing that all the time, then you're like this whole conservative thing about personal responsibility. You don't have personal responsibility. You don't believe in it. You believe in it for other people.
Something of an expert on the 2020 election, and I've given talks about it. And every time I talk about it, someone goes, well.
By the way, he is a spreader of misinformation. He is, guilty of this whole like spreading information so that we don't exist in the same reality. Him saying he's an expert on the 2020 election is he made the documentary 2000 Mules, which was where he was trying to claim that there was election fraud in the 2020 election. I'm going to try to get this right. I might flub it a little bit, but if it sounds stupid, it's because it is legitimately that fucking stupid. I think what he did was use like geolocation data from phones around polling locations to try to make the case that too many people were submitting ballots in those areas or something along those lines. And just think about that for a minute, right? You have location data from phones that are located close to a polling location. Why the fuck would that even mean that that person is submitting a ballot? Polling, locations sometimes are at churches, sometimes they're at schools. If you drop your kid off at a fucking school, doesn't mean you're dropping off a ballot. If you went to church that day, doesn't mean you're dropping off a ballot. If you're walking by a ballot drop box on the fucking street, maybe you're walking to the fucking store. Doesn't mean you're submitting a ballot. But that's when he says he's an election expert. That's his expertise in elections, is making that kind of just incredibly stupid extrapolation and pushing it off on his followers. Which, by the way, I think he walked that back. And he went to I think he went to prison for one of his, what was it? Dinesh prison. This motherfucker was pardoned by Trump, by the way. Dinesh D'Souza, conservative author, avoided actual prison time for campaign. He committed campaign finance fraud. It's always instructive to look at people like this, right? Because this is someone who engaged in illegal activity that was both manipulating, lying, and extracting money from people. You can't really trust a person like this to be honest about things like election fraud and stuff like that, because they are actually criminals. They are actually people that lie to other people. They are actually people that try to make money and manipulate and break the law. Which, by the way, I mean, this whole time he's talking about law and order. He doesn't even follow it himself, right?
There clearly is nothing wrong in the 2020 election because there were 50 cases where these things were adjudicated. Now, there's not a single case in which the actual allegations of fraud were adjudicated.
That's also not true. He's not used to people looking into this. A lot of people on the right, they repeat this because most people don't actually look into this. a few of the cases were adjudicated on merit. I don't remember how many. And the other ones that weren't, quote unquote, adjudicated on merit weren't adjudicated on merit because the person didn't have standing. In other words, um, they were not an affected party, or they were kind of dismissed out of court because they didn't really have any merit to their argument to begin with. Like, it wasn't even worth going to trial because the judge looked at, like, I remember there was this recording by Rudy Giuliani, and the judge asked him, like, "Oh, are you alleging election fraud or something?" And Giuliani says, like, "Oh, no, we're not alleging elector fraud." And the judge is kind of like, "Well, then why the fuck are you here?" Right? And the reason that they were here, the reason they had so many of these cases, is to give the illusion that there was something nefarious going on. Oh, we have all these cases in the courts. And you tell people that, and people think that there's more legitimacy to it than there actually was. But when you go to a court, the court realizes, oh, you don't actually have anything. You don't actually have an argument. You don't even. I won't even get into the standing thing. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the whole standing thing, like, they were trying to throw out the entire results of election based on, like, what they were claiming were a few instances of voter fraud. Like, they keep in mind, they didn't even prove that to be the case, right? But even if they had proved that to be the case, it wouldn't have even been enough election fraud to affect the outcome. And they still wanted to throw out the entire election over it. This is why the courts threw him out on standing, by the way, in some of those cases.
On all kinds of procedural obstacles or issues of standing, these cases were dismissed. You should have brought the case before the election. You had to do that. Obviously, the fraud was not obvious then. If you brought it after the election, it's moot. Or this is brought at the state level. It needs to be at the federal level.
Also, it's instructive to kind of point out, like, okay, even if we grant them what they're saying is true, that's not true, but let's grant that what they're saying is true. Oh, these cases were never taken up on their merits. They were never adjudicated on their merits. They're basically, what they're saying is the courts never looked at the actual evidence that they apparently had. Well, if they had all this amazing evidence that didn't get to see the courtroom, why don't they just talk about it? Why didn't they bring up those specifics? And the reason they don't is because there were no specifics, because there was no evidence, because there's nothing for them to actually point to. It's just vague gesturing at something.
And so the procedural adjudication is considered adequate to establish the veracity or the validity of the 2020 election.
Just as a quick thing,
I'll just finish my point, and you can jump in.
We can do the 2020 election. So do you concede on the whole Mar-a-Lago thing that Trump was retaining documents, and then we can move to the 2020 election?
We haven't addressed Mar-a-Lago. I'm setting up the intellectual groundwork by saying that on the 2020 election, statements are made that are accepted as gospel by the left. Let's take a simple one that was repeated ad nauseum. The 2020 election was the safest, most secure election in U.S. history. To which I ask, where is the evidence that there was less fraud in 2020?
Well, here's the thing right here, right? And this is a thing I think most people are aware of, but we kind of forget about. The 2020 election, remember when it happened? Remember the right complaining about it? What did the right obtain because of all their complaints? They obtained multiple audits and recounts in multiple states. I don't remember in my lifetime that many recounts, that many audits of election results. So for them to say, oh, we're not allowed to question it, we're never able to see the evidence, there was never like what is the evidence that was the safest and securest election? Motherfucker, you had a lot of opportunities to try to prove your case. You were given recounts and audits that you didn't even have a reason to have those recounts and audits because you never produced any evidence. And those recounts and audits just came back and kind of reiterated the same point that you lost the fucking election. When people say that it was the most safe and secure election we've ever had, it's probably because we've looked into that election more than any other fucking election we've ever had. And the reality is that you guys just cannot accept the results. You don't want to accept the results. And so you just keep repeating that, oh, there was some issue there that you can't point to, that you have no evidence of, even though everybody fucking babied you, even though we gave you all these recounts and audits that you didn't fucking deserve, and even when you got them, even when you put your people in place to do them, you still didn't accept it. So the reality is that you just throw a giant fucking temper tantrum and you're a giant fucking baby who can't accept losing, and you're a manipulative, abusive fucking asshole. Honestly, like genuinely speaking, that's how it is.
Then in 2016, 2012, 2008, 2004, where is that demonstration? Who has actually done a comparative evaluation of the amount of fraud in recent, forget about old elections, and shown that there was less in 2020?
And here's another point, right? When he asks who did that, well, motherfucker, you're the one that's making the claim without any evidence. Why don't you fucking do that? Why haven't you done that? You've had years to do that. Why don't you actually present something instead of just saying shit, instead of just making shit up, instead of like getting people all worked up and hyperventilated and you know, spreading all these rumors and everything? Why do you play this game of like, oh, where's the evidence of it? I don't know. Why haven't you looked for it? Why haven't you produced it? Why haven't you worked on that? Why haven't you put together anything? It's very illustrative when you have somebody that just makes shit up, that just says things, and especially when they've had plenty of time to try to like, you know, find some evidence for the things they're saying to substantiate it, right? And they just keep coming back with like they don't have anything, and they just keep making the claim. That person that you're looking at is full of shit. That's all there is to it.
The answer is not only has this never been demonstrated,
Never.
it has never been attempted.
Never been attempted.
And so an utterly idiotic statement.
Never been attempted. How many audits and recounts in 2020 election? 46 of the 50 U.S. states had recounts in the 2020 election. He says that we had never, not once, we didn't do anything to produce evidence of the security of the election. You realize when he says a statement like that, he's literally just blatantly fucking lying.
Almost preposterous on its face. We know
It is.
this election
It is preposterous.
and we're proclaiming it to be the safest ever, with zero empirical evidence produced to support that. And yet, the entire left, to my knowledge, without exception, went along, nodded its head, accepted this as true, became very scornful of any attempts to show the contrary.
You know why? Because it's obvious that you guys were trying to manipulate the population and lie to the population, make up claims that you couldn't substantiate in order to steal the election. That's why. The left isn't dumb. They realize what you guys are doing. You guys are playing a game to try to steal representation from the rest of the country. And the reality is that you had plenty of audits, you had plenty of recounts, you had opportunities to take evidence to the courts, and you guys didn't produce anything. That's why.
So, doesn't this show factual dogmatism on the left that is just as corrosive as anything on the right?
No. So, I mean, we can go through any of these statements. I'm still putting a pin in the Mar-a-Lago thing because I think it's important to go back to, but I'm very familiar with the 2020 election.
Okay.
I think the issue is that, one, when people say, well, it wasn't adjudicated on the facts, it was tossed on standing or procedural grounds, that's bad for the person bringing the case. If you're losing on standing, then you must have never had a serious case to begin with, because that is literally the easiest part of a case to survive. To build a prima facie case saying that I have authorization to bring this case in front of this court has subject matter jurisdiction, and it's the appropriate venue to hear the case, and here are my complaints where I'm alleging that a law was broken. In half these, they didn't even have the remedies that they were looking for was to toss the entire outcome of that election, which is an insane...
Now keep in mind that when Destiny tried to interject earlier, Dinesh made sure, hey, I need to finish my point. Dinesh will now try to interrupt him to try to spin more bullshit, because Dinesh is going to see that Destiny is going to lay out all these like things that counter the points that he was trying to make. Watch, I guarantee it.
Remedy, if you're looking for that, a court's not even going to bother to hear the case, because the whole point of a court hearing a case is that they're going to grant you some kind of relief. If a court can't do anything about it, then the court's not going to listen to it. Number one. Number two, for the evidence that was made public, we know that for a lot of this, it was a blatant lie. So, for instance, when we watch Trump's lawyers show and we watch Trump talk about the hidden boxes in that in the State Farm arena that were pulled out from under the table and put back, and we don't know where they came from, we do know where they came from, and you can tell because if you watch the full 6-hour video where she's giving a presentation to the state election board or state legislature or whatever, you can see her fast forward 10 minutes where they were counting, they finished counting for the night, they take the boxes, put them on the floor, slide them under. 10 minutes later, they get a call saying, actually, we're going to resume counting because we want to get these results out faster. They take the same boxes out, they put them on the table. Not only was that a complete and total bold-faced lie.
By the way, how stupid is that talking point from the right? The right was able to get away with just kind of pushing that over and over again. Where did these boxes come from? They were pulling boxes out from under the table. Well, motherfucker, they got boxes of votes. Why the fuck wouldn't they have boxes of votes that they're moving around and counting? I can't believe people even like validated that as being even remotely a good point to make. That would be like me saying, you have a teacher who's grading assignments, and the teacher has a box of assignments, and people are freaking out like, oh, the teacher's doing something wrong. They're cheating. They're cheating students out of their proper grade because they pulled a box out with assignments in it. And it's like, yeah, like they carry assignments in boxes. What the fuck are you talking about? Why is that even a thing? The way that this works is, by the way, I might be a little bit wheezy because I'm getting over a cold. The way this works is that the right will just say something like this, and they say it in a way that implies that there's something nefarious going on, and the vibe that they give their audience is that there's something nefarious. The audience isn't even thinking about logically why this would even matter. They're just getting the vibe that something bad's going on.
Lie when it was first presented in court or presented to the public. It was a lie that Trump repeated up to and including his speech on January 6th, where he encouraged his followers to go and riot at the Capitol to try to delay the outcome of the election. So every single case has been some variation of them not knowing if a law was broken. You can listen to hours and hours of deposition. You can read the subpoenas. You can read the judge's decisions. There's a reason why you guys will say, well, all of them were thrown out. None was adjudicated on the merits. Trump was president for 4 years. He had Barr look into all of these claims. Barr said that all of them were BS. Trump is president now. He has the ability to go back and look at stuff. Nothing has been dug up. In fact, the first time Trump was president, when he also made claims that the election was rigged, he put together an election board to look at if there was any impropriety or fraud that happened in any of the states, and they found nothing. They disbanded it in like a year. For the final point, you bring this point up that wow, it's crazy that they say this was the safest election ever because there hasn't been a comparative analysis on fraud. I think the point of the statement was to say that there were more people, more cameras, more systems that were looking at this election than in any prior election. And I would argue that just like how Doge went through the entire government and massively failed at discovering any waste, fraud, or abuse, Donald Trump and all of his cronies have been looking at so much election-related stuff, and the only fraud, weird stuff we've seen has come from the Republican side. Tina Peters being a great example of that. Trump trying to steal the election with his false elector slates being another great example of that.
All right, so let me offer a couple thoughts. Number one, if you're right that a bungled legal effort failed on account.
Also, there's another way to kind of see how full of shit they are on this. If they believe, like, if their actual argument is, oh, we just don't know, we don't have enough information to know if the election was valid, we need to investigate it, right? We need to make sure that everything is, hunky-dory and everything. Why didn't they ask for that for the 2024 election? You know why they didn't ask for that for the 2024 election? Because they won that election. That's why. That's the difference.
Of the incompetence of the people who tried to prove the fraud, I would argue by the same token that the Democratic goofballs who launched 90-plus charges against Trump in multiple jurisdictions were equally dumb because they made claims that they were unable to sustain. The cases were thrown out.
Why were those cases thrown out? Right, Trump got he lost a lot. He lost a lot of cases. His businesses, people forget about this, but his businesses were a lot of them were shut down for fraud. A lot of them were he had that one where he was scamming veterans out of money. Now the media doesn't really cover this as much because when you have a business like that, the business is the one that's liable and you personally aren't liable. So the business technically was the one that lost those cases and not Trump personally himself. but these are the businesses of Donald Trump and his family, right? So they've lost multiple cases. They lost the case in campaign finance fraud in New York. Donald Trump lost that civil case against E.G. Carroll. And then the other cases, the one with the Mar-a-Lago documents case, and in the 2020 election, attempt to overthrow it case. Those cases were never had an opportunity to go to court. And the reason they didn't have an opportunity to go to court was not because there wasn't good evidence, not because the courts didn't want to see it, not because the courts didn't want to put a trial on. It's because Donald Trump won the election, and as soon as he won the election, since he was in control of the government now, he basically had the government squash those court cases, those elections, or those court cases, those investigations. That's why. It's not because the court looked at the available evidence and was like, you guys don't have a case here. Get the fuck out of here. It's because they basically just cheated their way out of accountability.
Made moot, exposed to the public for their prima facie idiocy, or they capsized of their own weight. They were withdrawn. Fannie Willis was basically had her own problems and had to withdraw. The
Look at that, we got an arm.
Basically decided that's the end of that.
It's flexible.
So what I'm getting at is either we rely on the legal process as a pretty fair adjudicator of these kinds of claims, in which case you got to grant that the case against Trump ended up, think of it, you didn't have one shot. You had like 7 shots at this guy. You failed on all of them. Even in the one place where you, quote, got him on the ultimate bogus case, which was in New York, the judge himself was too timid to impose a verdict and basically says, Mr. Trump, you can go. I wish you well. Even the...
Why did he say you can go? Well, he didn't really say I wish you well. Why did he say you can go? Because he won the election. And because the Supreme Court had ruled that presidents are absolutely immune to criminal prosecution. So because you can't have the president be in jail while they're serving as president of the United States, the judge didn't have a choice. That's why. And notice that Dinesh leaves that context out. He leaves that context out because he knows he's lying. He knows he's full of shit. He knows he's trying to manipulate the audience. Remember, circling back to kind of the main theme so far in this debate, which is that there is a fact of the matter. One side is deliberately manipulating the facts, leaving facts out, and trying to mislead and manipulate the population. What is Dinesh doing here? He's trying to pretend that Donald Trump was exonerated on the merits, when the reality is that Donald Trump got out of these prosecutions simply by running for office and winning the presidency. These cases didn't get to fully go to trial and have the case made. The judges didn't toss it out like they did with the election fraud cases. The judges didn't toss it out because they were like, there's nothing here. The judges literally just could not do anything about it because he won the election.
Judge knew that he was part of a political game and he had to fess up, because if he was really enforcing the law, think of it, if you or I were found guilty of 34 felonies, the judge would have said, I'm imposing a sentence. My sentence might be overturned or maybe held to be invalid, but this man has broken the law 34 times. In fact,
if I remember correctly, by the way, correct me if I'm wrong, you correct me in the comments, what the judge actually said was, we're delaying the sentencing until after he finishes his term. Not, oh, you're let off the hook, I'm not even going to try, like Dinesh is trying to make it seem like here. I think the judge said, we're going to have to delay sentencing until after your presidency ends, because we can't do anything. Like, we can't, like, the law does not allow us to go after the president. Law won't allow us to attach punishments to the president, so we have to wait till you're out of office again to pick it back up again. They paused it. They didn't let it go. They paused it.
Think of the stupidity. This was 34 different checks, so apparently it's 34 different felonies. The lawfare of it couldn't be more obvious or blatant. Now,
why did the jury convict him? Well, why did the jury convict him in New York?
What's that?
Why did the jury convict him if it was just lawfare?
Because a jury in New York, like a jury in D.C., is going to be... Well, all right,
Aren't you saying then that half the country is living in delusion if you can't even trust a jury of?
By the way, right, because right-wingers will try to use this argument, oh, a jury in D.C., a jury in New York. The way that juries are selected is not like, oh, you take just random people off the street and you put them in the jury. That's why they try to make it sound like, oh, you picked a bunch of people from New York. Everybody knows people from New York are like more liberal leaning. No, when they choose the jury, they screen out people. If you're ideologically biased, they screen you out. You're not put on the jury. If you have preconceived notions of either party, you're screened out. Like if they approach you and you're like, oh, you know, I feel this way about Donald Trump or I feel that way about Donald, you're screened out. If you show that you have like a preconceived notion of like, oh, I think this person's guilty or I think this person's innocent, you're screened out. They specifically pick jury members who are neutral. And in fact, the defense in those cases, so if it's, you know, Donald Trump in this situation, his lawyers get to go through the jury and they get to look at him and say, you know, there's something called jury nullification. They get to kind of look at him and go, hey, we have an issue with this juror here. We think this juror is biased. And then they look at that and they decide whether or not to, you know, kick that person out of the jury. A trial by a jury, if a jury finds you guilty, that jury is relatively neutral and they still found you guilty. Dinesh knows this. That's why Dinesh is kind of floundering now. He wasn't expecting to be called out on this point.
Every single person, not a single person could say, I don't agree with the verdict here.
You think the OJ jury got it right?
The OJ, that's a totally different case with factual
if you
accounting.
trust the jury, then they got it right.
I can say that juries
Don't
might.
agree.
I can say, wait. I can disagree with juries sometimes. You just said that there are two sections of the United States, in New York and D.C., and I'm willing to bet you'd say other states where there is no jury that could hear. Well, I'm curious, actually. Fine, there are things in the OJ case that I think it seems like he was clearly guilty of something. What law in New York State that he was convicted of breaking, that he received almost 34 felony counts for, do you think he didn't actually break? Did he not lie when he paid his lawyer Cohen a fee that was actually just a money transfer to Stormy Daniels and then commit a bookkeeping fraud on the furtherance of that lie, which is why the misdemeanor was upgraded to a felony? Do you think that's not true?
One of the problems with living in this kind of society today, and one of the essential defining elements of lawfare, is simply to ask this question. If anybody else did that, or if Trump himself did it, but was not running for president, would these charges have been brought? And again,
Notice there's two things here. Notice he's not really answering the question. But number two, what he's actually trying to do is he's not even saying that he's not guilty of the crime. What he's actually saying is, well, okay, maybe he was guilty of it, but most people don't get charged with this crime. So the fuck what? Right? Some people get away with crimes. Doesn't mean that the people who don't get away with it are not guilty. Those people are still guilty. And I mean, law enforcement, the criminal justice system, they have limited resources. Why wouldn't we want the criminal justice system to focus on the most powerful people to prioritize when they're enforcing the law? We should want that. And you know, if you find someone else who's guilty of the same crime, then report it to the police, the FBI and shit. Go for it. I don't have a problem with that.
We're all watching this. We're not on the jury. We're watching this as spectators from the outside. We've got to use a certain rule of common sense. You have this guy Trump. He's in the thick of New York real estate.
Common sense?
He's in the thick of...
Common sense is always used by people who don't have an actual meritorious argument. Common sense is my feelings. Everybody thinks they have common sense. Everybody does. People who disagree with each other think they have common sense. Everybody thinks they have the common sense. Common sense is just another way of saying my feelings.
Of all these claims of bombastic claims, my Mar-a-Lago's worth X, this is worth Y, my assets are worth this. Everybody does this. Now, if all of this was so fraud...
Keep in mind, by the way, Dinesh D'Souza himself was found guilty of financial crimes. So no wonder he's a little bit defensive of this kind of... Everybody does this. No, they don't, bro. You do it. Donald Trump does it. And you guys think that you should be able to get away with it too.
Fraudulent. How does the man go 75 years of his life without a single charge?
He didn't really, right? This is a crafty way of... And again, he's not really answering the question though, is he? He's deflecting. But like I mentioned earlier, Donald Trump's companies have, throughout history, throughout time, going back into the past, they have been charged with issues with crimes and stuff like that. The thing is that when you have a company like that, the company itself is the one that faces the law. You're insulated personally from the law. It comes down to, I mean, for most things, not for everything, but for a lot of things, it's the company itself that'll be held liable. So the companies that Donald Trump was running were absolutely held liable for various crimes over the years. For one thing, one of his companies was found guilty of discrimination against black people in housing. Yes, it was the company. It wasn't Donald Trump himself that faced those charges. But whose company was that? Who was the one in charge of that company? Donald Trump.
Then, interestingly, he enters politics as a Republican. 93 charges are dropped on his head. Now, if you genuinely think, and look, we could very well in this audience be exploring the delusions we're talking about. If you genuinely are a smart guy and you think, I think that's right. The guy was squeaky clean for 75 years. Then he became a habitual criminal.
But he wasn't squeaky clean. Like, we know things about his past. We know that he didn't pay contractors. We know that the banks lent him money that he didn't pay back. We know that the banks had to bail him out because they were on the hook for so much fucking money that they lent to him. We know that those same banks stopped lending to him for that reason. We know that he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and we know that his businesses themselves were found guilty of things like discrimination. Right? He wasn't squeaky clean. There's just a lie, right? It's just Dinesh D'Souza spinning a narrative because he knows his audience doesn't look it up. He knows his audience wants to believe that Donald Trump is this great hero. But it's just not true.
And committed 93 offenses, warranting the guy being jailed for life, a guy who just happens to have been the President of the United States and on the verge of being reelected a second time. But you don't have to worry about that if you can put him away. And this doesn't raise any issues of political targeting, Stalinism, find me the man and I'll find you the crime. If you genuinely don't think any of that is at issue, then we are at a little bit of an intellectual breakdown here.
So this isn't an intellectual breakdown. This is a bad conversation about politics with your family at Thanksgiving. There has to be a better factual analysis than, isn't it weird? Isn't it weird that, so the 34 felonies that he was charged with and convicted of in New York State, he did those. For the Mar-a-Lago documents case, this is the thing, he couldn't have possibly been charged with a crime like this before having a security clearance or being in a job with security clearance because he wouldn't have had access to these documents. So for the Mar-a-Lago case, he took classified material from the White House, stored it in an area where classified material is now to be kept. Yep. He showed other people some of that classified material, and then he resisted efforts from NARA.
And by the way, if you're not super familiar with this case, right, people like Dinesh D'Souza will try to make it pretend like, oh, Donald Trump was treated so unfairly. The FBI gave him like a year to return that shit. They gave him multiple chances to return it. They tried to work with his team to get the documents to be returned. Donald Trump instructed his workers to move the documents so that the FBI couldn't find them. This wasn't like, oh, the FBI was so unfair to him, the FBI didn't give him a chance, the FBI was trying to get him on some technicality. They gave him a lot of fucking chances to return those documents. It wasn't like, oh, Donald Trump had them in his possession, he forgot he had them, he didn't know he had them. He knew he had them. The FBI told him that they did. The FBI asked for him back. They gave him plenty of opportunity to give him back. They, gave him extensions on it. Donald Trump deliberately told his staff to move them so that the FBI couldn't get him back. Donald Trump was honestly, he was treated unfairly. He was treated unfairly in the sense that he was given special treatment that the average person doesn't get.
And the FBI to retrieve said material, and he was directing his employees to hide it and lie to the FBI when they were requesting information about this material. This is incredibly unique. The first part of that is
true, and all the rest of it is not true.
Which part of it was not true?
The first part of it, that he took the documents, is true. The second question is, how does a president who takes his own documents, which he has the plenary power to decline.
This is so stupid and such a betrayal of constitutionality and the rule of law. Those documents are not the president's documents. Those documents belong to the United States. The United States is not the United States of the president. The president serves the Constitution. He serves the United States, not the other way around. Those documents do not belong to the president. The president doesn't own the White House. He doesn't own the military. He doesn't own the documents from the government. Those things he has temporary authority to have influence on, authority over, whatever, but they don't belong to him. Much in the same way that if I work for a company and the company puts me in charge of documents, those documents don't belong to me just because I'm in charge of them. They belong to the company. And if I'm fired, if I leave that job, I no longer have authority over them. The other sneaky thing that Dinesh does here is he says, how can the president steal his own documents? He wasn't president. He was no longer president. It's not like you were elected president one time and then when your term is over, you're president for the rest of your lifetime. No, it doesn't work that way. You are president during your term, and after your term ends, you're a regular civilian. You're not a president anymore. You don't have special privileges. You don't have authority over the military. You don't have authority over those documents. You no longer belongs to you. He was no longer president. It's not his fucking decision anymore.
How does he prima facie violate the law, especially when you consider that pretty much every other president, going back to Nixon, had documents. Mike Pence had documents. Joe Biden had documents in his garage, including a bunch sitting in his car. These documents were fully exposed. There were documents at the Penn Biden Center, accessible to everyone, and yet the guy who looks into it...
This is true, by the way. There's a lot of documents that are floating around from different, not just Biden, not just from a variety of different people who've served in the government. Number one, not all of those are like super duper top secret. Some things are labeled top secret when they don't really need to be, or they were labeled top secret and never reclassified. So that's number one. Number two is there's the part of that law that makes it a crime is that you are knowingly retaining the documents. Number one, you're knowingly retaining them. A lot of times, people who are working in these offices, they have documents floating around their being or their person, and they don't realize that they have them. They don't realize after they left office. Maybe they put it in a cabinet somewhere. Maybe they had it in a dresser or a desk, and they forgot about it. You have to knowingly retain them. That's number one. Number two is you have to knowingly retain them, and and be trying to keep them despite knowing that you're not supposed to have them anymore. It's not like Donald Trump had them floating around Mar-a-Lago and he didn't realize he had them. Again, the FBI told him, hey, you have these, you need to return them. We're going to give you a whole fucking year to return them. And he decided not to. He was not president at the time. He doesn't get to decide that.
He goes, I don't think we should charge this guy because he's kind of forgetful and he won't really withstand trial.
But he wasn't forgetful. And again, Dinesh knows this and he's just lying. He's being dishonest. Donald Trump didn't simply forget that he had those documents. Donald Trump was instructing his staff to move them so that the FBI couldn't find them.
Because he tends not to remember things. I mean, since when does somebody
He's just a big baby. He didn't know better.
Serious offense because they don't have a very good memory of the stuff that they manifestly did. So when you suddenly develop this kind of selective aggression, Trump has done all these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you conveniently forget that presidents have routinely taken their own stuff.
It's not their own, though. It doesn't belong to them. It belongs to the United States.
That this looks to me quite clearly a case of isolation.
And this betrays this mentality that he has and that people on the right have, that the president is like a king, that they own the country. They don't own the country. They work for the country. They work on behalf of the Constitution. They're supposed to work within the Constitution. Those documents don't belong to the king. There is no king that owns the documents. They belong to the United States.
Trump. I mean, the way we know.
Well, here, real quick, just on this, because you laid out some facts, and the facts.
You said he obstructed.
Well, wait, real quick. So you say these words, prima facie. Prima facie means has
on its
person
face
who is under the jurisdiction of some place, has he met the prerequisite elements to have committed the crime? So the crime of retention of classified materials requires
Intent.
So one funny thing that conservatives like to do is they like to say that, well, Herr said that Biden was forgetful and he wouldn't be able to stand trial because of his forgetfulness. That's not true. What Herr was speaking to when he was speaking of Biden's state of mind was that he probably forgot that he had these documents here or that he was storing these things. The crime that speaks, the federal statutes that talk about the retention of classified material that makes it a crime is knowing that you actually have them. That's why when Biden contacted the FBI and said, hey, we have classified documents here. We think you guys should come and grab them. They weren't convicted or charged with any crimes because it seems like they weren't trying to intentionally store classified material, as opposed to Donald Trump, who was showing documents to people, and you say, well, they were his, right? Why did he say twice, I could have unclassified these, or I could have declassified these, but I didn't? And also, as a second quick thing, the president does not have
Yes, thank you.
of everything,
Well, that too,
when
but
it comes
yeah.
to the Department of Energy, which has nuclear secrets, especially when you're talking about TSSCI, SAP,
Oh shit, I fucked this up.
special access programs that are part of our nuclear secrets that Donald Trump was keeping at Mar-a-Lago. So even that he couldn't have declassified on his own.
Here is the problem. I mean, had this case proceeded all the way,
Why didn't it proceed all the way?
these elements of the crime that you're describing been proven, we could then debate.
Why
what
didn't
was
it proceed
going
all the way though?
I'll give you the Trump side of it. I took these documents. I was contacted by the National Archives, NARA, I guess it's called, about the fact you need to give some of these documents back. What does some mean here? Trump is like, some of them may be mine, some of them I may have to return.
What the fuck do you mean by mine, dude? What the fuck does that mean? None of them, literally none of them are his. None of them, not a single one. It does not work that way. The documents don't, they are property of the United States government. They are not property of the president. I might be wrong about this, but I don't even think like stuff that he works on personally while he's serving in the office, I don't even think that stuff counts as his. And the reason they don't is because the government needs to keep a record on everything. When you're working as president and you're working on that stuff while in your presidential capacity or whatever, you don't get that luxury. They are part of the official record now at that point.
And so a process now begins of bargaining back and forth. At one point, the FBI...
There is no bargaining. Okay, this whole thing with like these conservatives, they just feel fucking entitled. There is no bargaining. It just doesn't belong to you, period. End of fucking sentence. There is no bargaining. There is no like, oh, you know what? I want to steal from the government. I want to take shit that's not mine. You know what? I feel entitled to it. I feel like I should be able to own this. Let's just bargain. Let's just, I'm going to take some stuff from the DMV. I'm going to take some pencils. I'm going to take some paper. I'm going to take some, a few printer machines, a few fax machines. I'm going to take the little machine that, makes the registration documents, stuff like that. And then they come and they're like, hey, you need to give that shit back. And I'm like, well, I feel like some of this is mine. I kind of want it. So like, let's how about this? How about I take like the printer machine and you can have the rest of the stuff? No, motherfucker, none of that shit belongs to you. Give it all back. What the fuck? You're not entitled to bargain over shit that's not fucking yours. The fuck?
Comes to Mar-a-Lago. Remember, Mar-a-Lago is a protected facility. Comes to Mar-a-Lago and puts a padlock on the storage facility where the documents are held. So what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with a president who finishes his term. People come into the White House.
Yeah, emphasis on that shit, by the way. Finishes his term. He's no longer president. It's no longer his term. None of that shit belongs to him. It didn't even belong to him in the first place. Just because you have authority over it doesn't mean it belongs to you. But you're not even fucking president anymore, so what the fuck are you talking about?
Clear all the stuff out. Where are they going to move it? They move it, not surprisingly, to the residence, Mar-a-Lago. And then begins this process of negotiating over these
There's
documents.
no negotiating.
If you're saying
This fucking entitlement that they have. Like, by the way, I got an arm on.
Laws were broken,
Woo!
I would say, what? Because Destiny thinks that the president...
No, because that's really what the fucking
No.
law says.
If you can show me a legal process where these elements of the crime were proven, We could look at it.
Well,
But
there is.
it-
That's what
it-
an indictment
the-
is showing these are the laws that we're saying that he broke.
I'm gonna
This
grab
is
some
the
water,
laws
hold
that
on.
the grand jury. Okay, well then you know that the grand jury returned an okay to charge Donald Trump with these crimes.
Okay.
Also, you said that Mar-a-Lago was not secured for the storage of classified information. And if Donald Trump truly had nothing to hide and he was cooperating and returning things as he should, why was he having his employee hide boxes from his own lawyers so that they would not be fully truthful, not of their own fault, but because they had no idea when they were communicating with the FBI about documents that Trump was retaining and that he was having brought to his room, going over, taking some back, keeping others, and then telling Nauta, his employee, to lie to the lawyers about what they were hiding.
Whenever you have an indictment, the prosecution, in this case, it was the Biden administration.
It was Jack Smith. It was a special prosecutor.
Okay, Jack Smith. It was a special prosecutor appointed by the Biden regime.
It wasn't appointed by Biden. It was appointed by Merrick Garland, the
He was appointed by Merrick Garland. It's not part
it's
of the
confusing
Biden
because
regime.
Trump likes to directly control his attorney general, but most presidents don't do that because it's seen as corrupt.
Merrick Garland was an objective, fair-minded. He was not making any kind of political. Listen,
Why wasn't the special prosecutor appointed on day one?
You're actually trying to get me to enter into your dream world here, and
I'm only talking facts.
I'm not. There are no facts.
There were facts.
No, because an indictment is allegations. Unless the indictment is presented in court, the other side gets to fight back. It's like if I were to take any indictment and read it, and then I think, oh, the guy obviously did it because he did this, he bought a gun, this and that. I haven't read the counterpoints. I haven't seen the cross-examination. It hasn't gone to court. But if you...
But it didn't go to court because Donald Trump won election and he basically made those cases disappear. You see how like Dinesh here is kind of having it both ways? He's simultaneously saying, hey, it'd be great if we had a court case so that we could have, the defense could have presented their side and we could have actually had it adjudicated in the courts, but the reality is that the entire reason we didn't have that court case is because Donald Trump won an election and he made those cases disappear.
Accept all the claims of the indictment as, quote, factually true and consider that there's no other side of the matter, then it's easy to go, I got the facts.
So then wouldn't it be easy for you to just say, if everything in the indictment is...
The other thing about a case like this is it's not even complicated. You don't even really actually need a trial to know what happened here. It's all just out in broad daylight. This is one of those things where it's not like there's hidden information that we don't know because it's part of like a seal for a court. I mean, there are probably details of the case that we don't know about, but the details that we do know in the public is enough to very clearly say that it was a violation of law. We know Donald Trump retained these documents. We know that he wasn't supposed to. We know that the FBI asked for them back. We know that the FBI gave him multiple opportunities to. Dinesh doesn't even deny this. Dinesh was talking about a negotiation, which there is no negotiation that should be had, by the way. You're not entitled to that, but he's admitting there that Donald Trump knew he had the documents. Donald Trump was keeping them, even though he was asked for them back. All of that we know. All of that is public information. We know that employees of his moved the documents. We have photographic fucking evidence of them moving the documents. All of this is known publicly. This isn't one of those cases where, without having a trial, we really wouldn't know, the details that might like move it one way or the other. Everything is broad daylight, publicly known information, all blatantly, very clearly is exactly what it looks like. It's a violation of the law.
Is true, Donald Trump would be guilty of those crimes rather than try to make excuses for what was in the indictment. Because there's another weird game that I notice the conservatives play where conservatives will do this thing where they'll defend a thing, and then after they've defended the thing, they'll say that the thing that they were defending is indefensible, but if it did happen, they give justifications for it anyway. Why not just say, well, I don't believe what's in the indictment, even though you say that they're just allegations. They're not. You have to show evidence to a grand jury to secure the indictment, so there is at least some evidence that's presented.
And look, the indictment contains elements of factuality and elements of subjectivity. So the factuality would be something like this. Did you take a document? Did you put it in the garage? Was it found in your Corvette? The elements of subjectivity are things like this. Were you authorized to take it? Even if you were...
That's not subjective at all. There's no subjectivity to that question. If you are not president, if you are not in office, You do not have the authorization to retain those documents. And when the government comes and asks you for them back, there is no subjectivity to that. There is no, Dinesh is just straight up just lying here. He's just making shit up. There is no subjectivity to it. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the government. The government comes and tells you to give them back, then you don't have a fucking choice. There's no subjectivity there.
Were not authorized to take it. Did you follow the procedures to return it? If you didn't follow those procedures,
What fucking procedures? They're documents. Return the fucking documents, right? It's like, again, if I steal a fucking copy machine from the DMV, oh wait, there's a whole procedure that I have to go put the goddamn copier in your fucking car, drive it over to the fucking DMV, and hand it over. And matter of fact, you don't even have to do that because in this case, the FBI came to him. The FBI came to him and was willing to pick them up themselves. There is no crazy fucking procedure here. There isn't like a 50-step process to get it done. It's just literally hand over the shit that you're not supposed to fucking have. There's nothing subjective about that.
how culpable are you, let's say, for not doing that? Because there are all kinds of people who break all kinds of laws.
Oh, again with this shit. Oh, well, everybody's doing it, so, even though he might have technically broken the law, like, can't, he should be allowed to because everybody else. Number one, like, no, everybody else is not doing it. That's not true. You're making that up. Number two, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't. Oh, Johnny stole a car. All these other people are stealing a car, so I get to steal a car too. It doesn't fucking work that way. That's not the way the law works. And circle back to the beginning of this conversation when Ness is talking about, oh, the right has this vision for America that's based on law and order. Apparently you don't. Very clearly you don't have that vision of the United States. Very clearly you think law and order should only apply to people who are not, in your political faction, who are not your buddies, who are not your friends.
And they're given a pass because, as you mentioned with Biden, you said that his forgetfulness had to do with the documents. Wrong. It was very clear from the special counsel's report that his forgetfulness had to do with trial. We cannot take this guy to trial. He deserves to go to trial. He did break the law, but we don't think that he can withstand trial because basically his brain is fried. And so,
Anything like that, yeah.
Is that a fact or not?
No.
That's not a fact.
No, the forgetfulness had to do with the
No,
crime. The elements of the crime is the willful retention of classified material.
The intent.
If you walk out of a skiff and you have something on you by accident, you might get fired. Depending on your job, you'll definitely get fired. But to charge you with a crime, you need intent. Now, for every single element that you described there, well, you'd have to take them and you'd have to know that you didn't follow the right procedure. An example for showing that subjective argument might be Donald Trump showing something to somebody saying, I should have declassified this, but I didn't. Don't look too closely. That would be an example of like a subjective thing where, sounds like he maybe didn't have the authority to do that. Also,
Well,
the SAP level classified stuff he had from the Department of Energy, he could have never on his own declassified, and he didn't go through any proper procedures there. And I think one of the most telling things, this is subjective evaluation, one of the most telling things is that Donald Trump never denied the behavior. He never said he didn't do a thing. Instead, all the conservatives started to switch to psychic declassification as the reason why Trump could actually take anything he wanted out of the White House.
No, look, you have the staccato style.
And by the way, I mean, that doesn't even fucking matter. Even if he psychically declassified, which is such a stupid standard to set. It's basically having no standard because you're just making shit up as you go along. But even if he had done that, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't belong to him. Even if it was not classified, it doesn't fucking matter. It does not belong to him. You're not able to retain it. Period. End of fucking story. Return it. It's not your fucking property.
Mixing elements of truth with elements of pure garbage.
Wait, what was the one thing? Wait, what was the one thing I just said that was pure garbage? That
I'll
wasn't
tell you.
true.
So Biden started taking classified documents when he was in the Senate. Okay? No one even thinks that Biden was non compos mentis then. So, according to you, the special prosecutor didn't bring charges not because Biden is gone now, but because
he's intentionally being dishonest, intentionally being manipulative with his wording. Biden knowingly took classified documents while he was in the Senate. Yes, because as a senator, you're entitled to look at and work with classified documentation. It's part of your job. The crime is whether or not you're retaining them when you're not supposed to. But importantly, knowingly. So if you took classified documents while it was part of your job, but let's say 8 years later, you leave the Senate and you forgot that you had these documents that you took to your office 8 years ago, that's not a crime because you are not knowingly retaining the documents. The intent is part of the crime. You have to have the intent. Now, you can say it's irresponsible. I might agree with you, right? We probably need to do a better job as a country, as a government, in being more secure with these documents, for sure, 100%. Have a better way of tracking them. Have the government, step in to be like, hey, we noticed that this document's missing. You need to return them. 100%. But the bottom line is, however you want to slice it, it's not a crime to retain them unknowingly, to retain them because you forgot them. And unfortunately, and this is the reality, this is something that we learned from the case, is that not just presidents, not just senators, all throughout the government, you have plenty of officials who are retaining classified documents they're not technically supposed to, but they don't really realize that they're retaining them, or they don't realize that they're not supposed to have them, and the authorities aren't asking for them back. So it just never becomes a thing. But like, if you think this is unfair to Trump, like, oh, you have all these employees of the government who are retaining classified documents and they're technically not supposed to. Why are they going after Trump? Because they gave Trump an entire fucking year to return them, and he's decided that he's entitled and he's a big fucking baby, and Republicans do whatever the fuck they want. The law doesn't apply to them, and he decided that he was just going to retain him. He had plenty of opportunity to return him. Well, that's all he had to do. This wouldn't even be an issue. This wouldn't even be a crime if after they asked him, he was like, okay, here you go.
Was gone before. And I'm saying, was he gone in the 80s? Was Biden mentally gone in the 90s when he took those documents? Why not prosecute him for those? But
the sights, the sounds, the styles.
Boring. By the way, I've been to 2 Warriors games.
quite clearly, the special counsel was not talking about.
I'll go if I'm invited or whatever, but watching sports most of the time is a little bit boring to me. There's some sports that I find interesting. I'll watch UFC for sure. That's pretty fun. I do want to go see an NFL game, but basketball's a little bit boring for me, to be honest with you.
Biden's mind in 1995. He was talking about Biden's mind today.
No, it doesn't have to do about being forgetful or competent central. That's did you willingly
misstating
no? Did
why
you
Biden
willingly
got off
take
the hook, pretending that it was an objective, fair-minded decision by a neutral guy? And I'm saying no. Now we turn to Trump.
Wait, why? For her, I'm just curious. Walk me through this. Why would you have a special prosecutor and then authorize him to release a report that's damning to Biden and report all of this stuff publicly if it was all politically partisan in the first place? Why not just lie about everything from the start? If they control the DOJ, the special prosecutor, and the FBI, why even report publicly that Biden had turned in documents?
Well, the scandal of Biden's documents became extremely embarrassing to the Mar-a-Lago case. And so there was an immediate need. Okay, we now have to cover for our guy to make it seem like the other.
That doesn't really
the
answer the
guy who did
question.
something wrong.
No, why
Hold
report
on,
it at all?
That doesn't answer the question at all.
Tell me why it's wrong. So what does the DOJ do? They pick a guy in Delaware, nominally a Republican, but nevertheless he's under the thumb of the Biden DOJ. He's reporting to them.
You notice how there's no actual evidence of this? You notice how he's just making up a story? It's just I want this to be true, so I'm going to just start making shit up to spin a narrative around it.
He has to ultimately survive their scrutiny. Merrick Garland is still in charge. And so this guy conveniently comes out, Biden, he did some bad things, but you know what? He's a little forgetful. We can't really go ahead. Anyway, what you do is you get an official.
And this is so annoying, too, because Destiny has gone over this multiple times at this point. Dinesh can't even fall back on, he didn't really know the technical elements of the law there. Destiny's pointed out multiple times. By the way, I just don't believe. I don't believe that Dinesh did not know going into this that the elements of the crime requires intent. It requires intent. He knows that. I just don't believe that he didn't know that. But if he didn't know it, on the off chance that he didn't, Destiny's probably repeated it 3 or 4 times now at this point. Why is Dinesh pretending the element of the crime doesn't require intent? It's just, if you retained classified documents at all, it's illegal and you committed a crime. He knows that it requires intent, but he keeps pretending in this debate that it doesn't, and this is because Dinesh is a manipulative person. He tries to convince his audience of stuff that is usually either partially true or untrue, and he omits information, he's specifically, intentionally trying to mislead the audience. He's a liar.
Imprimatur, Biden's off the hook. All right, let's now proceed to get the guy we always set out to get, namely Trump. And what I'm saying is, you're supposed to be like a sophisticated political guy, but you can't.
Let's set out to get the guy that we wanted to set out to get, Donald Trump, right? Okay, if that was the case, then why did they give him an entire fucking year to return him? He had an entire year to simply just return him, and you wouldn't even have this issue. If they simply just wanted to get him, why would they give him all that time to turn in the documents? It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Can't see that there is a clear effort here. How do
No,
we clean
there
up
isn't.
the crimes of our guy because we want to stick the classified
He's talking about
document
himself.
offense only on the other guy, even though our guy did the same thing and arguably
No, it's not the same
certainly for a
thing.
much longer period of time and much more carelessly because the documents are sitting not only in his damn garage, but they're sitting at the Penn Biden Center where anybody can wander in and have a look at them. And not only that, if you look at all the reports that Hunter Biden made to Burisma, I'm talking about.
Okay, wait, before we go to
reports.
Burisma, so just to be clear, so I can
Hold on,
understand.
let me
Well, no, because we started off with Burisma.
What a
You're
deflection
saying
too.
that the
Oh, let's
same
talk about
FBI that
Burisma now.
supposedly orchestrated January 6th, that worked as a deep state check on Trump's power, even when Trump was in office, and was capable of doing all of these grand things. This Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who was totally under the thumb of President Biden, despite the fact that he dragged his feet on all the prosecutions of Trump and waited way too long to appoint Jack Smith, and is one of the #1 center of complaints of every center-left Democrat. You're saying that that same institution's FBI was making it publicly known that they had found documents at Biden's house? Why, if they could suppress, if Merrick Garland could control a special prosecutor, which I don't know if you're aware of or not, the whole point of having a special prosecutor is that he's not directly under the thumb of the Attorney General. Otherwise, we would just call that a DOJ prosecutor, right? You're telling me they had so much power to cover this up that they were influencing this 300-page report that Herb puts out that has a lot of damning testimony, a lot of stuff that makes Biden look bad, but they couldn't just cover up the initial FBI claim?
All right, so notice how this debate has shifted from the factual.
Okay,
to
wait,
now
okay,
what
wait,
they-
hold on.
on,
We're
to
gonna
now
play
what
this
they
game,
would
but
call
let
the
me just finish my point,
rhetorical
okay? Just to be, wait,
conjectural.
hold on. This is not you're doing the rhetoric thing. So everything I've stated thus far relating to Donald Trump's indictments was a pure fact. You are
It's a
spinning me a
repetition.
tale
It's a repetition of a charge. It's
of
not
an
a pure
indictment.
fact.
Yes, you're
It's a
giving me conspiracy
repetition
theory.
of an indictment.
You're
okay?
giving me conspiracy.
Now, let's come back. I'll answer your question. You're like, this FBI, how is it that they would have... The truth of it is simple. You have a case against Trump. Trump is now going to have 75 attorneys on his side that are going to be looking into who else had classified documents.
Why? That wouldn't help him win his case. That doesn't make sense.
That's one of the ways you defend, is you show that this crime has been widely indulged in by other people and was not seen to be a crime.
No, that's
That's
not how you
fucking
defend against
stupid.
a crime. It
Yes, it
doesn't
is.
work that way.
No,
If that was the case,
so
no one in the
fucking
United
dumb.
States would get a DUI or traffic ticket ever again, because plenty of people drive drunk and speed, and they don't get traffic tickets. The reality is the facts of the Mar-a-Lago indictment are unique to Trump.
No.
They're unique to
You,
Trump.
you want to play attorney here? We can pursue the point.
Okay.
It is frequently the case that if somebody can show, in fact, this was part of my own campaign finance violation case, where
That you lost and you were prosecuted? What the fuck are you talking about?
we basically said Dinesh gave $20,000 of his own money
And you
to a
lost.
college friend who ran for office, and he was $20,000 over the limit. Part of my defense was no
How did that work out for you,
American in
bro?
the entire country's
Lost that goddamn
history
case.
has ever been prosecuted on a first-time basis.
Sounds like you were pretty
for giving
fucking
that
flagrant
amount
about
of
it,
money
huh?
with no quid pro quo and no benefit to himself, and prosecuted as a felony with an attempt to put him away for years.
But
This
if
has
we're
never
gonna
been done. Hold
if
on.
we're gonna go with that, you
That
lost
is
that
a
case.
definite-
Yeah,
You lost
yeah.
that case, so this is an example of the defense not working.
Okay, so
I bet you anything Dinesh was not expecting him to go there. Because the way a lot of these right-wingers operate, they're so used to the media treating them with kids' gloves and not just calling them out on their bullshit because, like, they don't want to scare them away from, like, future interviews and stuff like that. I bet he wasn't expecting Destiny to just, like, straight up call his bullshit on that one. But the gall that he has to even bring that up as an example, it just goes to show how fucking arrogant, entitled, and, like, willing to lie and manipulate these people are. The dude, he lost that goddamn case. How are you gonna bring that up as an example of that being like a good defense? The the gall, the arrogance to do that.
So in your fluid metric, if the case, if I lost the case, I must be guilty. Just like if OJ
Yeah,
was
bro, that's
acquitted,
kind
he
of
must
how
be
it fucking
innocent.
works.
But oh no, that wasn't the case. So
I'm just trying to talk about the
I'm just
facts
saying
of what
you
are
have
laid
a
out.
fluid, you have a fluid barometer.
It's not fluid. It's very
It's very so
solid.
So according to you, because I quote lost the case.
You
let me
quote
tell
lost
why I
it. You
quote
literally lost the case.
Here I am, an immigrant. I'm sitting
Oh,
in the
now he wants to
offices
pull
of the
the
Southern
fucking
District of New York,
identity politics card. Okay.
and I'm looking at guys, and it's very clear from what they say that they're like, if you don't plead to this case, we're going to charge you with bank fraud.
Bro,
go,
like,
bank fraud? They go, yeah, because you took your money.
why do you even bring this up? He made the decision to bring this up. Like, Destiny hadn't even brought this up. This is embarrassing for him. Why the fuck would you decide to bring this up? It's fucking stupid.
Out of the bank. And they go, if you don't plead to this case, we'll charge you with mail fraud. I go, mail fraud? They go, yeah, because you put your check in the mail. These are the kind of people you're dealing with where they take what you did, they re-describe it 7 other ways, they then basically find a way to say to you, look, you want to take your chances with a Clinton appointee judge in a New York courtroom where you're facing years in prison? Or are you willing to plead
Buzzword,
guilty?
buzzword, buzzword.
Now, again,
Clinton
if you live in
appointed, New York
imaginary
judge,
America,
blah, blah, blah,
where
blah.
you don't think that if they want to get a doctor, they charge them with illegally administering pain medicine, and if they don't want to get somebody, they find something on your tax return. This is something that happens in this country, sadly, every single day. And it's
when you say
hard
that, when you say something happened.
You know what else happens in this country is that people just actually commit crimes sometimes and they get caught for it. That also kind of happens sometimes too, you know? And like, follow this line of logic to its proper conclusion. If his whole thing is like, oh, you can't trust juries, you can't trust the courts, like, then what? Then what? What then at that point? Like, he's been trying to make the point that his side stands for like law and order and stuff. Like, you don't have law and order if there's no way to have any court adjudicate the truth assessment of anything. If the law enforcement can't enforce the law because they're corrupt. If everybody's corrupt, if they return like a verdict or anything against you, then the whole thing just like then there's nothing. There's no standard. There's no nothing.
It's kind of hard for me to believe that I, a conservative, have to tell you this when the left at one time would have been nodding vigorously and saying, yeah.
Okay, the left is not in the room with us right now. Okay, so just focusing, I mean, like, if you want, we can go through the details of your case. I don't know if you want to do that. I don't think we have to do that right now. But if you're saying, I'm just curious, you said that this is a thing that happens all the time in the United States, this type of lawfare. So then did it also happen under the 4 years of Trump, and it's happening now under Trump too?
Is what happening? Campaign finance?
Is he abusing the legal system to go after political opponents that everyone else has done?
It remains to be seen. In my opinion, look.
Wait, so real quick, when Donald Trump puts out a Truth Social saying, Pam Bondi, my attorney general,
okay,
I want you to go after these 3 people. I think it was Bolton, Letitia James, and Comey. And I want you to use this prosecutor.
Yeah.
Illegitimately, she was appointed, and that's why her case are tossed. And Pam Bondi files indictments against 2 of those people with that prosecutor. You're saying that this type of behavior is just part and parcel of being the president or attorney general of the U.S.?
No. I'm not saying that.
Okay, so this is an exceptional behavior that Trump has done that no one else in U.S. history has done before, right?
Let me say what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. You take a guy and put him away for life and fail. That guy is going to be a little pissed.
So you would say that Donald Trump is engaging in immoral behavior, but he's doing it as an emotional response.
I'm trying to be honest with you guys, and you're jumping in as if you're trying to score, like, debating points.
I'm not trying to score debating. I'm trying to say factual.
Let me say what I'm saying. Let me say what I'm saying.
The president was mad. Go ahead.
Try to put yourself in a, try to have a little imaginative identification with the people we're talking about, right? So here you have Letitia James making to Trump's way of thinking anyway, utterly fraudulent case in which the bankers came in and said, we were not defrauded. We did our own evaluations. We made tons of money on this deal. So you have fraud without a victim. And then Letitia James, well, New York was the victim.
What the fuck? What? Does it have to do with Star Wars at all? Okay, anyways.
Okay, and then evidence comes to light, by the way, not discovered by Trump, reported on in the public media, that Letitia James, and by the way, there are other people doing this too, tries to take advantage of getting mortgage rate benefits by claiming multiple primary residences. Are you saying for a fact she didn't do that?
Correct. All of that has been tossed.
You're
yes.
saying that Letitia James...
Her and the chair of the Federal Board of Reserves or whatever, where they try to use this weird mortgage claim because it's apparently the only crimes that Donald Trump is familiar with that don't involve classified documents. Yeah, they fabricated these charges. That's why they were tossed. For these two people, it came out they weren't true. There was a mismarking on a mortgage form, I think, at the bank about it.
Okay.
But if you look at the actual rate she qualified for, if you look at the actual underlying documentation, it was pretty obvious she wasn't applying for secondary or tertiary residences as also principal residences for the purposes of obtaining a low interest rate mortgage. That is, it was all bullshit, yes.
I don't agree with that at all.
What was I factually wrong about there?
Hold on. And
there is no disagreement factually. Okay.
Well, there is a disagreement factually, and we can look at the facts of that case if you want.
Let's
the
do it.
point I'm trying to make is this: if somebody who's trying to get you on real estate fraud is themselves engaging in real estate fraud,
But that wasn't the
there's a certain
case.
delicious irony in exposing that.
It would be
Retaliation.
if you
It's
had
not that
evidence of
you're-
that,
it's
but
not that you're
you don't.
framing her
So
for doing something she didn't do. Let's for a moment grant that she did it.
let's
Are
not
you
do
saying
that.
that because it's Trump, he doesn't have any right to bring charges against her, even if they're true? And moreover, let's say that they bring the charges back and she's found guilty. Will you change your opinion?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would change my
You
opinion
would?
and follow. Yeah, of course. But
Just
like,
because they found her guilty, let's just say they
well,
took her to
you
a
would look at
court.
the underlying facts, but I would say, and this is where I'll grant to you, I'm definitely sympathetic of the president having these feelings. Maybe, and you can, I don't know, maybe we'll meet in the middle here. Maybe it would be good if we had a independent attorney general who wasn't taking direct orders from the president, especially if we're saying he might be a vindictive man-child, and that person should have the luxury of operating independently like in every other presidential administration past, instead of taking direct orders from the president who might, as you've just laid out an excuse for, engage in vindictive prosecutions of political opponents.
We now know from the Biden years that all the cases, including the state cases, were being filtered through not the Attorney General's office, but the Biden White House. Why
That's
do you
not
think?
true.
Hold on. Well, it's not true.
It's not true.
I mean, stating it doesn't make it so.
And
you know?
I know, I
Exactly.
agree. That's what I'm saying to you. Where's your evidence for any of it? Where's the evidence that her was influenced by Garland? Where's your evidence that her was influenced by
let me ask you
Biden?
this.
Where's the evidence of Biden?
I'm actually kind of surprised that Dinesh is even making these kinds of arguments. I wonder if he's just kind of past his prime. But like so many arguments in like him bringing up his own case was fucking stupid. Him saying that like, oh, just saying it doesn't make it true. Like, bro, that's what you're doing, and it's obvious to the audience. Why would you even say that?
And giving direction to Merrick Garland. Where's the evidence of NARA or the FBI behaving improperly with regards to the Mar-a-Lago case?
Okay.
Where's the evidence that Jack Smith was told by anybody to do his investigation what he did? There's no evidence of any of this stuff.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
How many times did either Fani Willis or her lover show up in Washington, D.C. and meet with the Biden administration? How many times?
It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean it's
Doesn't
filtered through the
matter.
White House.
Okay.
The president isn't allowed to talk to anybody now, or else it counts as improper
Oh, so you're saying
behavior?
it's perfectly fine for them to go to the White House and have a conversation, but you know what? They were talking about a bunch of other stuff unrelated to these prosecutions.
Like when Donald Trump
All right.
calls Putin for
Hold
2
on,
hours
hold
after
on.
kicking out every world leader from the
Let me ask
Oval
you this.
Office?
Let
The
me ask you
president
this.
is allowed to have conversations with people. If something improper is happening, I would want to know about it, but you would hope that people are reporting on it or that people have some kind of evidence of it, like we do for all of the improper conversations that Trump has, like when Giuliani made a phone call to Zelensky's aide, or when Trump made a phone call to Zelensky to threaten to withhold aid, or like when Trump made the phone call to Raffensperger to try to rig the election in Georgia, or like when
That's
for
all.
any of the other...
This is all bullshit upon bullshit.
Wait, those calls are recorded.
sure
We've
is.
listened to them. We can hear the phone calls.
Okay, so let's start with the Raffensperger call.
Why don't we go to the Mar-a-Lago stuff? Let's just figure that out.
We are, but what we're doing with Mar-a-Lago is we're trying to...
Did Donald Trump take classified information
Trying to
from the
spin a
White House?
narrative.
Yes.
He wasn't supposed to have it at Mar-a-Lago.
Maybe.
What do you mean maybe? Was it Mar-a-Lago a skiff? Is that a secured, classified?
It doesn't matter. The issue is not that. The issue
is the issue.
You just said intentionality, and I'm saying
I'm not. We haven't gotten into intentionality yet. Are you allowed to have classified material knowingly outside of a secured, classified area?
You might. You might under certain circumstances.
No.
Yes.
If you want, there are like 10 different statements I can make that Donald Trump himself issued in 2016 about the importance of classified documentation. In fact, Jack Smith quotes all of them, including the executive order. Okay, then you know how embarrassing it is. Well, no, so I'm curious. Donald Trump did all the prerequisites needed to break the law. He held the documents where they weren't supposed to be held. He knew they were classified. He said it to multiple people that he was showing them to, and then he told his employees to obstruct investigators when they're trying to find it. This is a crime, assuming it's all true. There should be the easiest, like, yeah, of course, would be, if that was true, it would be a crime.
It is a little bit of a difficult question when a president.
It wasn't president. It's not his documents. Destiny needs to push back on this.
Comment that he sent to Kim Jong-un.
Shouldn't let him get away with this.
Is that unauthorized?
Why was there a special prosecutor for Biden then? Why was her appointed if a president can just do it? Shouldn't Biden have just said, oh, no, I'm allowed to do that?
The issue is not whether they did it, because if doing it by itself is illegal,
yes, it's the
Biden
intent.
should be in prison right now.
No, it's doing it knowing that you're retaining it outside of a classified area.
Exactly.
But I'm curious, if you're saying it's not a crime, why was there a special prosecutor for Biden?
Okay, and you cut me off earlier, but I was showing why Biden, I think, took a lot of those documents.
Why was there a special prosecutor for Biden if it wasn't a crime?
The special prosecutor was there to investigate the degree of the offense and whether or not charges should be brought.
But you just said it wasn't a crime. If it's a president.
I didn't say it wasn't a crime. I said that it depends on the situation. I said that in a case like this is like a CEO.
This is a good point. I didn't even think about this. If you're saying that the president, like even a former president, can just declassify him, right, or that the documents belong to him, then how can you even say that Biden was guilty of anything in that case? Notice a double standard there? It doesn't really make sense. I didn't even think about that. That's a good internal critique there by Destiny.
Walks out of a company, takes a bunch of documents with him. His documents that he wrote. Now hold on, there's a difference because we're talking about classified documents. But
like even CEOs can have non-competes.
Nothing you're doing is showing me that Trump's conduct here was distinctive in any way.
Okay, can you give me a single example in all of U.S. history of any other president saying to somebody, here's a document, I should have declassified it, but I didn't. Don't look too closely.
Okay, are you saying that if the president said that is by itself evidence that he is guilty?
No, but it's part of the indictment.
Okay, so what I'm saying is it's part of the indictment. I read it, you read it, big deal. The point
I
is...
don't even believe that I read it, to be honest with you.
It was a big deal like 15 times when he was talking about other people retaining classified information. Remember how big of a deal you guys made about it when you talked about Hillary's emails for like 3 years?
Yeah, and she was never charged.
Because she wasn't guilty of retention willfully, of knowingly doing it.
And you know that?
That's what the investigator said, because Comey said it.
Because Comey said it, right. Okay. So here's what
I'm sorry, do you have evidence to the contrary?
So
wait, do you have evidence to the contrary of that?
Ultimately, we are now we're trapped in an appeal to authority.
It's
according
to
you,
authority.
Comey, Merrick Garland, Biden, unimpeachable sources. Whatever they say should be taken as gospel.
No, they are impeachable. But
versus what? Dinesh D'Souza and Donald Trump, their opinions are just taken for granted. They don't have to produce any evidence, right? Notice again the double standard there.
If you don't agree with what they say, then you should say, this is why I disagree.
Right. So
not with a crazy tale you spin, but like, here's some contrary evidence. For Mar-a-Lago, we see the pictures of the documents on the stage. We see the pictures of the documents in the bathroom. We see the pictures of the boxes spilled out with the classified markings on the
Have you seen the Biden pictures?
I don't know if those were released or not. But the contention with the Biden pictures wasn't that there was classified material.
Have been widely released. You're supposed to be a factual researcher, but clearly
I'm a factual researcher.
Your eye only focuses rightward.
We saw the pictures because that was part of a federal indictment for a crime against Trump. Biden and Pence weren't accused of crimes because they made the phone call to the FBI. They made the phone call to NARA to say, hey, we think we have stuff here. You should come and grab it. Do you see the difference between behavior?
The difference between behavior now goes to a separate issue, which is how they reacted to NARA, okay?
Yes,
we got the other arm on there now.
And the context of this is really important because we now know there's extensive communications between NARA and the Biden DOJ about how to
Oh my
bring
God.
charges over this.
I was just
on
gonna say, how
Trump.
much longer is this? I want to go to sleep. I think I probably will cut it right here. I'll probably pick this up tomorrow then. So we are at about the 52. Let's go 8 more minutes. Let's try to get to the end of the first hour to make it nice and simple.
That correspondence has been released. So we actually know that the
I guess I'll
Nara
try to build
people
his
were
skirt in the
supposed to be
meantime.
these archives, neutral guys, librarians. No, they were very much part of a scheme for how do we go and get Trump.
I can
So
this
hold
is,
on.
I can shoot this down in one question that you're not going to answer again. If that was the case, why didn't they just file charges on him day one? Why did Nara give him 8 months to return documents?
Yes.
Why did what?
Why did Nara give him 8 months to return documents before the FBI finally got the charges basically ready for him to show up to take him because he wasn't returning anything? Why did they give him 8 months to return it?
Right, and I think the reason is simple, and that is when you're dealing with a massive sheaf of documents, a process of negotiation. It's
There's
fairly
no
familiar, by the
process
way.
of
Other people have done it.
negotiation,
So
bro.
much
You
with-
said this wasn't a
This
process
isn't a
of negotiation.
goddamn
You said this was
negotiation. It
them
doesn't belong to
talking
you.
the FBI, which they
Period.
had to, because they were like, well, there's a lot of stuff here that we're not getting, and the FBI, Nara doesn't have the authority to go to the president's house and retrieve stuff. That would be part of the FBI. That's why they had the communication. But if their goal, you said that they were talking the whole time like they wanted to fabricate a case, why didn't they just do it on day one? Why did they wait so long?
Well, that's because the normal gap in a communication to bringing charges is about 8 months. That's not unusual at all. If Nara was talking to the Biden DOJ and going, listen, we need to get Trump. He hasn't returned the documents. Here's a great pretext. Go get him.
The pretext being that he committed a crime?
No,
That's not what pretextual means.
No, a pretext means that we are engaged in this dialogue with the Trump administration. This can now
There's
be
no Trump administration. He's out of
recast
office.
as Trump refusing to return documents.
Because he did refuse. They stopped communicating. That's why when
These are like the little subtle things that I don't know if Destiny just isn't picking up on this in the moment, or he's just deciding not to kind of go down that route of argumentation. But when he says things like the Trump administration, right? He's relying on the audience not really understanding like technically what's going on here. There is no Trump administration at that point. Trump is out of office. There is no Trump administration. It doesn't exist at that point. It's not the president. It's not the administration. Donald Trump is just a private citizen at that point. He absolutely 150% does not have the authority to retain those documents at that point in time. And if the government asks for them back, he has to return them, period. End of sentence. There's no negotiation about that.
the FBI went to the Mar-a-Lago place, they found more documents. Some of those we still have never gotten back because Trump flew like 12 boxes of stuff up to his home in Bedminster or whatever.
Okay, look, I
We
think
can just say it's bad. If it's true, it's bad.
When they say Bedminster, I'm not sure if what is that out of country? Is he talking like Bedminster, like England or something? Hold on. Trump residence, Bedminster. Oh, it's in New Jersey. Okay. I was gonna say if that's out of country, that's even worse, right? But it wasn't.
we can
Okay.
keep going on this, but I think what's look. Let me put it this way. I think you're a little pissed off that your cases didn't work. Right? You were really hoping that you could get Trump, prevent him from running in 24, put the guy away, and win the 2024 election. Unfortunately, he was big enough, strong enough, had enough resources, had really good lawyers. He beat you every single time up and down.
So half his
And
lawyers
so-
that he had
and so
initially
now
are
you're
disbarred now,
trying to
so I don't know if you can call them
relitigate.
lawyers anymore.
You're
number one.
basically trying to relitigate in front of this poor bunch of guys and go, you know what? If only I, Steve Barnell, had been litigating this, we'd really have gotten him. But damn it, we had incompetent counsel. It all blew up in our
Well, if
face.
anybody would know anything about
Look,
relitigation, it would be the
let's talk
conservatives that
about-
constantly
why don't we
relitigate 2020
Okay,
that
look.
still don't acknowledge. Do you acknowledge that, for instance, Trump lost the 2020 election?
No, he didn't lose.
Okay, so we're talking about relitigation.
Okay.
Right? I mean, like, you guys don't even accept the outcome of the 2020 election.
Okay,
We're
hold
supposed to
on,
be
hold
a beacon on a
Hold
hill
on.
of democracy.
Hold on. Okay, so we need to probably say a word about 2020 because apparently, just like in the opening books of the Republic where Socrates has to say laughter, is that an argument? We're getting the sort of knowing ha 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 ha, which needs to be confronted because of its sort of sheer sneering dogmatism wedded to a bit of ignorance. So let me ask you this. And did you see my film 2000 Mules?
Watch the whole thing.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you dispute the accuracy of cell phone geo-tracking?
No.
No. If you were to be convinced that in the 2020 election, in the weeks leading up to it, and then again in the period leading up to the recall election.
It's funny because if Dinesh was a little bit smarter, he'd know that for Destiny to have watched the entire documentary, for Destiny to willingly, acknowledge, hey, I don't even dispute the accuracy of geolocation on phones. For him for Destiny to just willingly submit that without any kind of pushback or anything. For Dinesh to think that, oh, this is like a good line of argumentation that's going to work out for me is fucking stupid. You should know at that point that the other person is confident that they have a very solid rebuttal to you at that point. But like, I don't know, the arrogance, the lack of intelligence, this works with his audience, so he thinks that this is going to be a good argument. It's incredibly fucking stupid. He's going to fall flat on his fucking face with this.
In early Jan, that there were a number of individuals, mules, carrying ballots and going to 10 or more drop boxes. And this could be demonstrated by cell phone geo-tracking. Would you
think about that for a minute? How does that even make sense? So he's claiming that there were these mules, as he puts it, basically people, just carrying ballots that they weren't supposed to be carrying. And that's demonstrated using cell phone geo-tracking. The logical leap that he's relying on the audience to make is that, because it sounds like technical jargon that most people don't really understand how it works or anything. All it means, again, is that they have certain cell phones that they could track, they could geolocate in the area. How do you go from that to those people who had cell phones in that area were carrying ballot boxes? The reality is that he doesn't have that. He has no information pointing to the idea that these people had any ballot box. They're just random fucking people with cell phones who walk by those locations. That's it. But he's relying on his audience being bamboozled by the technical jargon to think that there's more to that than there actually is. And I don't know what Destiny's tactic here is going to be, but if I were him, what I would do is just start asking him, like, okay, how did you know? How did you get from that geolocation data? How did you actually determine that those people that were in that area had ballot boxes and that they were putting ballots in that area? He'll have absolutely no response to that because the reality is he doesn't have any information that confirms that.
Do you agree that this is something that needs to be looked into?
Sure, and you did, and found nothing.
No. Oh, wow. Wow. Wow.
Well, okay, that's not accurate to say. You found two people that you accused of engaged in mulership. Both of those people, I think, sued you or the production company, and then that's why the film was no longer for distribution or whatever, because those two people were both engaged in fair. One guy, I think, was a father dropping off ballots for his family, and I think the other was a nurse who was dropping off ballots for the nursing home that he worked at. Both of those stories were verified to be true. I agree, 2,000 Mules was an interesting hypothesis, but it was missing the part two where you actually follow through on the investigation and find the people engaged in muling for ballots. Simply saying that people drove by ballot boxes and not enough to prove a crime.
First of all, okay, the nurse that you're talking about, I've never heard of. I don't even know what you're talking about. That's fully made up. That's out of your ass, basically. There is a case where we have in Georgia by one guy who claims, who by the way is seen in the film dropping off multiple ballots. The guy says that this was legit, and he was dropping off ballots for his family, which is allowed. This case is being litigated because the facts of it are rather complex.
They're not that complex.
I won't go into it right here.
Yeah, you won't go into it because once you start getting into technical details, there's nothing fucking there.
In a civil manner or a criminal manner?
But the guy,
well, can you expand on that? Is it in a civil manner or in a criminal manner?
No, it's a lawsuit. It's a civil lawsuit.
Okay, so when you say civil lawsuit, who's suing who for what?
So the alleged mule is suing me and suing the company, claiming that he individually, he's not saying the cell phone geo-tracking is invalid. He's not saying anything.
Well, yeah, because it doesn't fucking mean anything, right? It just sounds like technical mumbo jumbo to people that don't really understand what it actually means, and it sounds like it's something more than it is. It sounds like it's like Batman put together like this thing that tracked people and showed that all it means is it's just they were in the location. That's it. That's literally it. Just that their cell phone was in the location. To go from that to they were dropping off ballots in mass for people. He has absolutely nothing whatsoever that says that. Nothing. There's nothing. Don't even be fooled by thinking that there's more to the story that that he hasn't explained yet. There literally isn't anything more than that. all he has is information that there were cell phones that were in the area, and he's taken that and convinced his audience that that means that those people with cell phones in the area were dropping off ballot boxes that they weren't supposed to, based on nothing.
He's simply saying what you showed me doing in the film is lawful. And in the film, we show a guy pulling up, jumping out, dropping these ballots, and he's claiming that that individual act was lawful. So
Yeah.
that's what's being litigated.
Okay, which is important. That's the whole point,
important,
right?
and
Yeah. And it could be illegal activity, right?
It could be illegal or it could be legal. That's what's being, this is being fought over. But what I'm getting at is no one is disputing the footage in the film. Some of it, you said, there was electronic surveillance.
And so it looks like they had a few instances of footage of people dropping off ballots. Okay. But in the case that he's talking about with that guy, because also don't be fooled by this, it's not like he had videos of thousands of people dropping off thousands of ballots. He has a few instances to point to. And one of the instances that he had to point to was a guy who was legitimately, legally dropping off ballots for people that he was allowed to drop ballots for. So, for example, if you work at like a nursing home or something, if they give you the permission and authority to, you can drop off their ballots for them. Right? That's information that you can verify. You go to those people and ask them, hey, did this person drop off your ballots? Were they supposed to? Yeah, I gave them permission to. Blah blah blah. End of story. And from that, he's trying to make it sound like something larger than it actually is.
Do you realize that the people who said that this was the most secure election in history never looked at any surveillance in any state? Do you realize that many states...
I don't even think that's a thing that he can actually validate. Every single person who said that the election was secure, not a single one of them have looked at surveillance footage. Have you? Has he? Has he looked at all the surveillance footage across the entire fucking U.S. to determine that, he hasn't even proven a single case of voter fraud from any of this. But he thinks that the entire fucking election... By the way, again, you don't have this level of scrutiny for the 2024 election. Why is that? Because you won. The reality is that you're making all this shit up because you lost
which had
in 2020.
Turned off their videos before the election so they wouldn't have that surveillance.
That's really strange then. I feel like Sidney Powell and the Trump admin should have probably chose some of their claims on places that didn't have surveillance, because the ones that they did, they intentionally obfuscated the surveillance cameras in order to lie about what they were showing. Like, for instance, the ballot boxes underneath the table.
Look, why don't we just stay with what... There's a
okay, well, we can stay with your case. In your case, it's been 4 years. Nothing has been resolved about this. It's a case about defamation. It sounds like that's what it is. It's not a criminal case at all.
In the film I made, we didn't talk about boxes under the desk, okay? We relied on two types of evidence, both of which, on the face of it, are valid. First, cell phone geo-tracking, and we showed that there were, in Georgia alone, in Fulton County, in that area, 242 mules, alleged mules.
That doesn't mean anything. Again, 240 alleged mules. What he's saying there is there's 240 people with cell phones who walked by those locations. That's it. And then he is now accusing those people of dropping off ballots that they weren't supposed to. He's lucky that he's not identifying all of those 240 people by name, or maybe he is, because that is a massive amount of slander, defamation, whatever the fuck technical term there is, to just claim that these people were engaging in election fraud for no fucking reason just because they happened to wander by a polling location or a drop box. Insane.
Who went to 10 or more drop boxes.
Again, they went to 10 or more drop boxes. That's a very loaded thing that he's saying. It's not that they went to 10 or more drop boxes, it's that they happened to wander by them. If you live in a city and you travel around the city a lot, let's say you got you go to your work, you go to a grocery store, you drop off your kids, you go to church, blah, 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 right? How often are you driving around or walking around and you happen to pass by a ballot drop box? To go from that to, these people were committing election fraud, they were dropping ballots off. I feel like I can't make this clear enough. Keep in mind, nowhere in this whatsoever does he have evidence of this 240 people. He doesn't actually have any evidence of these people actually even dropping off more than one ballot, let alone one ballot. He's just making shit up.
In the period of the election. Those same people, by the way, did not go to those drop boxes any other time because this was compared against a geo-tracking of an earlier date.
To
Now,
be
hold on.
clear, real quick, to be clear, when you say went to those drop boxes, all you have are those people passed by those drop boxes.
No,
That's
no.
it. You don't know what they did there. You have no footage of them dropping anything off. You don't know who these people.
Wrong, and wrong again.
Wait, you have footage of those people dropping ballots off at. Also, notice for the one guy that's suing you or your company or whatever, notice that you're talking about footage of him dropping ballots off at a single box. That's not even the claim. 2,000 mules is not 2,000 homing missiles to one box. It's supposed to be people dropping them off at multiple boxes. I didn't see footage of any of that, of a single person. And that would have been the strongest thing. If you could show one person one time visiting multiple ballot boxes, that'd be like, oh, that's pretty crazy. I didn't see a single example of that. Do you have a single example of that?
Yeah, I do.
Why didn't you show it?
It actually is shown in the movie. It is shown in the movie. What you really have is you see the same guy in 2 different outfits at the same box, but on 2 different occasions, dropping in multiple ballots.
Why would you use geo-tracking data to see a guy going through multiple ballot boxes and only look at his behavior on one ballot box when the central claim was the mule was going to multiple ballot boxes?
I'll tell you why. It's like this. It's like you have a serial killer who goes to 5 different
stories,
homes,
dude.
and
Just
you
random
find
fucking
5 dead
story.
bodies in those homes. His cell phone places him at those homes at those exact times of those 5 murders. However,
But
only
you don't have a murder occurring. You don't have an actual crime to point to. You're just making up a crime and then claiming because the person was in the area that you made up the crime for, they must be guilty of a crime.
have one video. Now, in the 2020 election, even in the places that had surveillance, they had surveillance in approximately 1 out of 10 or fewer drop boxes. So the truth of it is, you could have a cell phone moving from Dropbox to Dropbox, but only one of those drop boxes has surveillance.
I think
So
I would say the analogy
this
is
was all
very.
described. The analogy. This is all.
The analogy is telling because you're saying there's 5 murders, but you don't even have any proof of malfeasance happening at any
Yes.
of these ballot boxes. Also, when you say there's not surveillance on them, you keep saying that like that's exceptional. Surveillance wouldn't even really tell you anything, right? A guy could show up in a hooded mask with everything covered, and there's nothing illegal about that, and drop a ballot off, and you would know nothing about this person. How would surveillance even help in this case?
Well, it would help to establish that the cell phone, because the problem with the cell phone is my cell phone is moving from box to box to box. If I gave my cell phone to my wife, then she could be going from box to box, but it would be with my cell phone. The advantage of the surveillance, it can establish who is the guy who is showing up at the box. Now look, here's
But
the problem,
again,
okay? When you
the wording here is loaded. Showing up at the box. They're just wandering around an area where there might be a ballot drop box at. It's like you might be walking down the street and there's a ballot drop box near you. You might be driving down the street and you pass by a ballot drop box. He makes it sound like they're stopping at ballot drop boxes and dropping off ballots. He doesn't have any evidence of that.
cell phone geo-tracking, you get a cell phone ID. But the cell phone ID is not the phone number. And we have no ability, and neither do you, to take a cell phone ID and identify the person associated with that cell phone. The only people who can do that is law enforcement. And so we asked Democratic officials in Georgia, in Arizona, in Milwaukee, in Philadelphia, in Detroit, to look into this.
Christ, it's all fucked
Not
up.
surprisingly, the Democrats were like, nah, we're not really interested in doing this. We're like,
Yeah,
just
'cause
look
there's
into this.
fucking
Maybe
nothing there.
It's a very
Waste
plausible
everybody's time.
explanation. This guy just happens to take a really long walk around election time. He likes to stop at drop boxes. He smokes a cigarette at each drop box, and that explains why he's pausing at these drop boxes. So maybe there is an explanation. We'd like to know what it is. The movie can take you as far as the film can go, but to now demand, why didn't you do the investigation? We're not able to do that, and we said so in the film. So what I'm getting at is, this is not a case where there's nothing here. There is a lot here.
There's
literally-
nothing
how would you
there.
even get that information?
Well, the answer is the cell phone date. You just take the cell phone data. You have a list of 2,000 or more cell phone IDs. You just get the actual phone numbers of everybody. You go visit.
No, I'm asking, how would you get the phone numbers? How would you translate this from ID to phone number to person?
That can be done very easily. That's done in every burglary and murder case in the
Correct.
country right
The
now.
burglaries have something called probable cause of a crime being committed. There's no world where law enforcement could start pulling phone numbers and data from phones off of a wild hunch where no other information is shown. Probable cause meaning that it's likely that a crime has been committed here. There's no world where a judge should be signing off on warrants or subpoenas pulling information like that.
Okay, so this is a good question. You're saying that if the prosecutor, let's just say in Fulton County, were to go to a judge and say, we have identified in Fulton County 242 individuals
Jesus Christ.
who in the period leading up to the 2020
I need
election
like
or
super
the
glue for
recall
this shit.
election have been identified as going.
Wish you could advance your career without interrupting it? eCornell offers flexible online
I wonder.
programs in today's most in-demand areas. You'll learn from Cornell faculty experts and engage with peers from across your industry. Designed to fit your busy life, take the next step with Cornell University.
Okay, so this piece is broken.
Supplies are low.
It came broken. And I was hoping that this like super glue would stick it back into place, but it's not really holding. So what I'm going to try to do, I might just wind up making things worse. I'm going to try to use this file. Maybe if I rough up the surface of the plastic a little bit, it'll create like a surface for the, or it'll create pores for the adhesive to sink into and bond to. Maybe, just maybe. Absolutely not guaranteed, but we shall try. Because otherwise, tomorrow, I'm gonna have to stop by the store and buy some kind of super glue for this shit. Which realistically is probably what I'm gonna have to do. I don't know if I can I get away with this for now? I think I can, because even if I don't attach the whole piece, looking at the way that this attaches on, I think I can assemble the rest of this skirt. As funny as it sounds, a skirt. And then attach the piece that's broken off later on. Let's see if this did anything. Not really, no. This this type of super glue that I'm using probably doesn't work on this material. That's alright. Alright, well, it was worth a shot. It didn't fucking work. Okay.
Deliveries are late. You can scream all day, or you can try the
Directly to 10 or more drop boxes. By the way a cell phone moves is it doesn't move in a fluid pattern. It moves and stops and moves again and stops. You can actually tell when the phone paused. So we're talking about people who are stopping at the drop box. And if you go to a judge and say, we need a warrant to be able to identify these people and merely verify from them that their behavior was lawful.
Now keep in mind, because you might be fooled by this part, right? Like, oh, he's saying they were actually stopping at these drop boxes, right? So that sounds a little bit sussy, right? Okay, sure, I can grant that. Sounds a little bit sussy. But keep in mind how much he's lied about in this entire debate so far. And once you realize he's lied about so much, or left out information, or mischaracterized things, do we even believe that he's even being honest about the, all these 240 fucking phones stopping at each and every, ballot drop? Do we actually believe that? Do we believe that he's being honest about that? I don't.
according to you, that warrant would be impossible to obtain because there's no probable cause. Knowing something about the law myself, I would say that warrant would be extremely easy to obtain.
Then obtain it, motherfucker.
Illegal activity.
The election fraud is illegal. The question
No,
is,
you don't have any evidence of election fraud. You have evidence of people walking near drop boxes,
right.
which also are near post offices, which could be people mailing any number of things, right?
Let me pose a case to you. These 4 kids in Idaho are found dead.
Oh
and
my
this
God.
guy Koberger,
But you don't
received a
have.
cell phone.
Understand that the analogy that he's trying to use, okay, we had a murder, we had a crime that was committed, and then you find out, hey, you know, here is this person from their cell phone location data, they happen to be in that area at the time that this crime was committed. The issue with this analogy is that he doesn't have a crime to point to. There is no evidence that a crime was committed at all. In the analogy that he's using, there's a murder that happens. We could see that a murder happened. We find like a body or something. We know that a murder happened. And then we can use that murder to look at, okay, who was in this area at that time. And that doesn't prove that the person's guilty or anything, but it does give us a place to start. In this case, we don't have any evidence that any crime was committed whatsoever. We don't know that, you know, ballots were dropped off at these boxes that weren't supposed to. There's voter fraud committed in this location. All we have is that there was people in this location, period. That's it. There is no probable cause because there's no crime to point to. There's not even like any inkling of a possible crime.
In the vicinity of the houses, and he makes a big circle around the house, and that's the geo-tracking. He was there at the time or around the time that crime was committed. Are you saying that a single judge would go, we don't even have any evidence he did it?
No, I think you would have. I think that would be good for probable cause that a crime was committed because we have 4 dead bodies. It's likely a crime committed there.
That's right.
We have no evidence of voter fraud from any of these mailing boxes, so there is no probable cause to speak of. Again,
Right,
you don't even have evidence of a crime.
Right, but when an investigation is underway, judges are very willing to give law enforcement the tools to discover if a crime has been committed. I'll give you my own case, a very good example. So, in my own case, somebody tipped off the FBI that I made this contribution. The contribution could have
Yes, again. There was already a crime that was pointed to launch an investigation. It's not that somebody just out of the blue was like, hey, Dinesh D'Souza committed a crime. I don't have any evidence for it whatsoever, but look here's Dinesh. He's a person. Investigate him. There was an actual crime that a person was pointing to, and then that launched an investigation.
Well, no, it couldn't have been, right?
Why? Why not?
Because it exceeded the federal election commission's
there are
contribution limits.
actually legal ways to make a contribution. How do you think Soros
And you didn't do it.
millions of dollars? I just gave the wrong way.
Because Soros doesn't give millions of dollars to candidates or PACs. He gives them to things called super PACs, the hybrid 401 or 403 C5s or whatever, C4s or whatever, like the different organizations there, but not to a candidate directly. You give money to another person and tell them to give money to a candidate because you know that you would be bypassing the contribution limit. You're never allowed to do that.
All I'm trying to say is that a tip causes the FBI to assign $100,000 to investigate my case. And this is normal. When law enforcement suspects that there's a crime that's been committed,
But there's no crime that you suspect has been committed. You're just making shit up.
The exceeding of the campaign contribution limits. What you're talking about, dropping ballots off at a drop box,
Can
is
you
not
think
a
of
crime.
a good reason for somebody, let alone 242 people, to go to 10 or more drop boxes?
How many cell phones data did you go through?
Millions.
So of millions of cell phones, could 243 go by where 10 drop boxes are?
Go from one drop box
Go from
to
one
another
drop
to
box to the
10
other?
or
Yeah,
more.
sure.
Look, we're not talking about
240. Do you understand the odds that you're talking about here of millions of cell phones where they're post offices or post drop boxes near these locations? These are all post office drop boxes, right?
Look,
Could I conceive of 240 people out of millions of cell phones dropping off stuff?
I don't really want to waste my time watching his documentary because like he's so clearly full of shit throughout this entire thing. It's like a waste of time. But I'm gonna be honest. I don't even believe that they went through millions of cell phone data. Where do you find the resources to do that? How many hours would that take? Right? I don't believe that any of this was fucking done. I think they probably found some random phones. Shit, I don't even know why I'm granting him that charity. I don't even believe that they found phones that were in the vicinity of these Dropbox. I bet you what he did when he put his documentary together is he found a handful of instances, like that guy that dropped off some ballots that he did legitimately, right, for his family or whatever. He probably found like one or two of those, and then he used those as examples, and then said, "Oh, actually, we have cell phone data for, we looked at millions of people and we saw 240 other people doing the same thing." And meanwhile, I bet you he didn't show that in his documentary. He probably didn't show all these 240 people doing the same thing. He probably didn't show the location. It probably doesn't exist. I bet you he made this shit up. Also, what the fuck is 2,000 mules? I thought he said 240 people. I don't know.
Drop boxes during an election season? Sure, I guess. That's a very low number of people that would have to be out of those millions of phones you pulled.
There is no reason for anyone
There's
to go
a
to
lot of
drop
different
boxes.
reasons. No reason at all. You've never in your life gone to 2 drop boxes before.
We're not talking about showing up to City Hall and turning in your ballot. We are talking about these so-called mail-in drop boxes. Look, even if I were taking the ballots of my family members, am I going to say I'll put one ballot in one box and then drive to the next box and a third box?
Well, what does he mean by this, right? And the thing is, like, you can never trust anything this guy fucking says. You have to, like, think about what he may not be saying, right? When he says, they stop by one ballot drop box, they stop at another ballot drop box. Is it possible that they dropped off, like, on a Friday, they dropped off a ballot for themselves in a certain location, and then maybe on a Saturday, their wife wanted them to drop off her ballot too? And he's like, okay, well, I got to run to the store, so I'm going to drop it off like on my way to the store. So he found another drop box that was like nearby the store. Is it possible for it to be something like that, right? Because notice, he's not clarifying that they were stopping at each ballot drop box like right after each other, right? He's just saying that, all in all, they stopped by multiple ballot drop boxes. That can mean anything. And to be honest with you, I mean, this guy's a liar. I don't trust anything he fucking says anyways. I don't even believe that he even looked at, like, any of this information. I don't believe he had this information. I think he's just making it up.
And remember that we're setting a high burden.
Could they just be mailing stuff?
What?
Could they just be dropping off stuff to mail?
You can send in your ballot by the mail.
No, it doesn't have to be a ballot. It could be anything, right?
The mail-in drop boxes are only for ballots. They're not for anything else. They're not intended for the post mail. You don't put your utility bill in there. These are drop boxes set up for ballots. And what I'm saying is that it makes sense. All right, maybe by accident you went to 2 boxes, okay? You went to one and put in your ballot. You went to a second and had a smoke. Once you set the bar at 10 drop boxes, you defy credulity. There's no reason to do that. And that's why in itself, it is suspicious behavior. Now, are you saying that in all the 242 cases, am I saying that all of them were equally guilty of the same type of fraud? I don't know. But I'm saying that there's very good reason to investigate further. And let's
say that I grant all that. Let's say that I say there's very good information to investigate these people for crimes despite having no evidence of crime being committed and no evidence of what these people were doing at the drop boxes. You don't think that there wasn't very good reason to investigate Donald Trump for committing crimes relating to the retention of classified material when he's showing classified material to people saying I could have declassified it but I didn't?
I'm not saying that there's no good reason to investigate anything. I'm not saying that.
So then the investigations of Trump were done for a good reason.
Well, it could have been done. It could have. Generally, when there's an investigation, there is some plausible basis for it.
Sure.
But I think
like the willful retention of classified material. Yeah.
But I think you would be naive if you're saying, oh, you know what? Had this not been Trump, but let's say had it been Bill Clinton, they would have done exactly the same thing.
What about Hillary Clinton?
Well, I'm saying Bill Clinton because he was the president.
What about Hillary Clinton? She was running for president. We talked about her emails for years.
Talking about her emails is in the public domain is one.
No, see, he's going to be dishonest here. I think there was this might sound crazy, right? But legitimately, I think there was 10 fucking hearings and investigations into Hillary Clinton's emails. They weren't just talking about it. They investigated her. They fucking probed her fucking life. They put her through hearings.
Investigated her email usage.
Yes.
And what I'm getting at is, okay, the Hillary crime is. I haven't even brought that up.
There was no crime.
If I were to prosecute a crime right now, and I don't know if it could be pushed ahead, but the Russia collusion hoax.
What if you can create
your
hoax website by saying this is what I want? With Wix, you can.
Which began.
There's no hoax. Like there was a dossier that was put together. Okay, it was unsubstantiated, material. It's not really a crime. It's just, hey, we talked to these people. They said these things. It's unvetted. It's unverified, which was what they said, by the way, right? So then the FBI investigates it. They find that most of it didn't really have much to go off of. What is the crime there? That they investigated and they didn't find anything? Now, the other part of this too that they don't really tell you about is that there were people from the Russian investigations which were found to have had contacts with Russian agents. That's true. A lot of people don't know that. That's absolutely true. And there were some people that were charged with things like failing to register as foreign agents. In other words, they're American citizens or otherwise who were working on behalf of like political um, entities or individuals in other countries. You're supposed to register, and they failed to register. So the Russia hoax that they talk about, there was legitimate things there, and the stuff that they didn't have evidence for, they didn't do anything about that. They didn't charge anything with the crime. You're allowed to have opinion, by the way, First Amendment. He's been talking this entire time about, oh, you're not allowed to question this, you're not allowed to question that. Isn't this suspicious? Shouldn't we be able to look into this, right? But like the Russia investigation thing, like it's a crime now that people asked questions and investigated and looked into stuff. Notice the double standard.
With Hillary was then cooked up in the Obama White House itself, involved all the top officials of the Obama administration, was executed entirely intentionally.
This whole thing falls apart with a simple question as well that you're not going to answer.
What's your simple question?
Yeah.
What is it?
Why wouldn't they publicize the hoax before Trump won the election?
Why did
they wait to talk about this until after Trump won the election? Why wouldn't they do it before, like they did with Hillary's emails?
Well, this is...
Hillary probably lost the election because Comey made like 3 announcements. Comey's like a blog poster every day. We found a new laptop with more Hillary's emails. But Donald Trump was completely under wraps until after Trump won the election? What a horrible hoax.
Well, the answer is really obvious. I'm only speechless because of the sort of...
Because you're in real time
so
trying to come up with a new
obvious.
narrative.
Hillary was 100% sure she was going to win the election.
Oh my
Hillary
God.
had it made. All the odds were in her favor. She was leading it tremendously in the polls. In fact, Frank Luntz just reflects the popular mood, where on the day of the election, he simply tweets, Hillary Clinton will be the next president of the United States. She believed it. I would think Trump believed it. Everybody believed it. And when Trump won, these people couldn't believe it. And they were essentially in so now what mode. So here's what I'm getting at. Do I have to explain why they had the meeting in the White House in October as opposed to July? You seem to admit they had the meeting. You seem to admit that all the deep state guys were there. You seem to admit that Hillary cooked up this false dossier, and this was used for at least 2 years, maybe more, to cripple the presidency of Trump. Is that a crime?
So
no, it's not. Literally not a crime.
The problem is it's not a crime to investigate things. It was a crime, for instance, when Donald Trump fired Comey to obstruct the investigation into all of the colluding Russian people around him, which was probably criminal in nature. But of course, Donald Trump will never be convicted of any crime now that the Supreme Court has said that the president apparently can't commit crimes. We do know that people were convicted around Trump for things related to colluding with Russian or Russian officials. Manafort was a great example of that. Roger Stone colluded with Guccifer when it came to leaking the hacks about the Hillary email address and all of the emails that she supposedly had on her server and everything else. But to talk about this collusion hoax with Obama and the bogus stuff that Tulsi Gabbard has released, all of this stuff had been investigated by our deep state operatives for like a year leading up to the election. Do you agree that Russia was intervening and interfering with all of the media cycles and everything in our country? Do you agree that Russia had companies, the Internet Research Agency was one of which Manafort turned out indictments about, that he was influencing the election in the United States? Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that?
Well, that is not what the Russia collusion hoax was about.
Well, but do you agree or disagree with that?
I agree with it in the blasé sense that I think that because the United States is the most important country in the world.
So it was the largest disinformation campaign in all of foreign interference history.
We cannot go through an election without the following countries: China, India, Israel, Qatar, Russia.
Sure. Can you give a
many
single
others.
example of China, Israel, or Qatar intervening in our election atmosphere the same way that Russia did?
I would say that the Qatar influence is far greater and far more pernicious.
Give me an example.
Hold on, I'll give you an example. So in the case of Russia, the attempt was an extremely clumsy attempt to influence social media posts by bots and other.
So it wasn't
Hold on,
clumsy.
hold
they
on,
were
why-
literally
why do you keep
organizing
interrupting
protests
me?
in the
Hold on.
United States, and they had a company here. Some of
I'm
the largest
Qatar,
GOP
hold
accounts,
on.
10_GOP at over 200,000 followers, was ran by Russians.
Qatar, let's look at what Qatar has done. I just read a report that Qatar put $1 billion into Georgetown University, a single institution. Qatar buys political science departments. Qatar has invested heavily in the US media. If you want to influence an election, you don't think it's better to influence it through massive media outlets that reach tens of millions of people? Yes. So Qatar's influence, I mean, again, if you can seriously contend that Russia was the leading influencer of the election, I think you're extremely naive.
Okay, so then let's say first of all, you have no evidence, but we'll say
No
that I grant
evidence.
you that.
Well,
Okay,
I have the
let's say
evidence
that
of
I
the
just agree with you.
investment.
So Qatar was influencing U.S. politics. Who was the guy who just got a $400 million jet from Qatar and just agreed to give them a security assurance the same as we would to a NATO ally and is allowing them to train fighter pilots in the United
Utterly
States?
blown the fuck out. Utterly fucking
So-
blown the fuck out on this.
Does Donald
So
Trump
what?
want to know? What did Biden get from
Hold
Qatar?
on.
What did Biden get from Qatar?
You actually think you're
Nothing.
making a good point.
Oh, he is.
Leapfrogging from the topic we were discussing, which is, you start out with a claim. Russia was unique in trying to influence the election. I make the obvious point, who's not trying to get a favorable outcome for their country? We know Ukraine was. Why do you think Ukraine
It's
was
not the
so
same.
involved?
The difference is that I'm giving facts. When you
No,
say
what
other
facts?
countries advocate for themselves, you're allowed to do that. There is a process by which you declare with FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, you declare that you are spending money in the United States to do this. Russia did not do that. They used subversive means. So, for instance, Tenet Media was a recent example that was uncovered. The FBI said there were some 100+ other organizations doing this. And if you
Okay.
read the Manafort indictments, you can see that there were agents operating companies in the United States that were wholly owned by Russia, pretending to be Americans that were organizing protests, organizing rallies,
So
and
that is
and
your
advertising on social media.
Wait,
That's the examples that I've given that are later in
Okay,
indictments.
so
You have
your
nothing
case-
for Qatar or
your
anything else.
case-
Yeah.
Your case, such as it is against Russia. But you notice that the collusion hoax had nothing to do with Russia per se. It was about Trump. The heart of the case was not that Russia is trying to influence the election. There are all kinds of things you can do against that. You can deploy the CIA. You can charge them under FARA. You can arrest Russians. You can do sanctions. Notice that the Russia collusion hoax, which frankly, many people in this room probably were like, oh, this is exciting. We think we can sink the president this way. It was based on the idea that Trump went along with it.
But he did,
Trump-
didn't he?
No,
Didn't
he
Trump
didn't.
say on TV, if you release the 10,000 emails to Russia, you'll be greatly rewarded?
No.
Wasn't Guccifer a Russian hacker that
Okay.
Roger Stone himself was
Hold
working
on.
with to time
So-
releases of Hillary's emails, the most damning stuff from the Podesta stuff?
Okay. What I'm getting at is...
Wasn't there a Trump Tower meeting where first Trump officials and surrogates lied about what the meeting was for, and then later they admitted that, yeah, there was a lawyer lady from Russia, and we were seeing if they had information about Hillary Clinton?
Okay. So
So you say, okay,
prior to the Mueller investigation, all of this recycled garbage was in all the media, and all of you guys were cheering it and hoping it would amount to something. And then Mueller investigates it, and he goes, guess what? There was no collusion.
So that's not what Mueller said. I see you
Okay,
didn't read the
no.
report.
So I'm
Collusion is
saying,
not a legal term.
do
What
you-
Mueller said was there
do
was
you-
probably criminal obstruction
do
that
you-
prevented him from being able to do the investigation.
All right. So
That's what happened.
Do you dispute Mueller's conclusion that there was no Russia collusion?
He wasn't there to determine collusion as so far as a crime. There is no crime of collusion. Mueller said that he couldn't gather enough evidence to prove that, but he said that there was heavy obstruction that probably would meet the level for criminal obstruction along the way. For instance, why did Trump fire Comey?
Okay, hold on.
Will you
So
answer
here's
that
something
question?
very
You won't, because
interesting.
there's only one
Here's
answer. And
something
it was
very
to
interesting.
it was to obstruct the investigation.
Okay.
That's why
you
he fired
said,
Comey.
You
yeah.
said a little bit earlier ago, why would you even need a special counsel to look into something if a crime had not already been committed? You said that. Then you said just now,
I don't think I
Mueller
said that, but-
said, I don't have enough evidence that the crime was even committed. And yet he had been investigating this for a long duration of time. and he concluded there's nothing there. But evidently there was enough there for him to do the investigation.
What do you think obstruction is? Obstruction is when you make it hard for a person to investigate. That's what the crime of obstruction is. Why do you think Donald Trump fired Comey?
Why did Donald Trump fire Comey? Because
Every time,
he's the president. He has every right.
notice every time that he asks him a question like this, where it like puts Dinesh on like a back foot, or makes him realize like oh shit, I don't have like a good answer for that. It kind of contradicts my point. Notice the pattern that, and we'll see this tomorrow when I kind of end the stream in a few minutes. I'm pretty much done for tonight, but we'll see this tomorrow. Every time that happens, he's going to do the same thing, which is he's going to repeat the question. Oh, why would he do that? Why he's doing that? Because it gives him time to pause and think about how he's going to try to spin a narrative. He's repeating the question in order to like he's on the fly in the moment trying to make shit up as he goes along.
When we talk about Democrats, we talk about what's moral and what's right. When we talk about Trump, we talk about what is in the outer perimeter of what is he legally allowed to do. He fired.
Destiny's been trying to make this point for a long time now. It's not like you watched my stream or anything. I had to give a little advice here. It's a little bit too wordy for your average person to really understand what you're trying to get at there. The outer perimeter of what you're legally allowed to do versus what's moral. I get it. I get what he's trying to say. I don't think your average person really puts two and two together really to get what he's trying to get across there.
Because Comey wouldn't stop the investigation into him.
Comey is an utter sleazeball.
What does that have to do with what we're talking about?
Hold on. Comey was in on the Russia collusion hoax.
Then why did he make public announcements about Hillary's email campaign that probably sunk her entire campaign?
Why do you keep changing the topic?
I'm not. I'm just pointing out how ridiculous all of your statements are. None of them make sense.
We're talking about Comey. Comey is a guy. This is a guy.
Why did Trump fire him?
Trump fired him because Trump realized that he was actually part of the hoax.
Do you even know why Trump? Do you know why Trump stated he publicly fired him? The Hillary email stuff. Trump fired him because after Flynn was indicted, Trump said, "Well, now you guys should be done.
There's
you should be done."
Indictment.
It was a good indictment. He shouldn't lie. Don't lie to the FBI about talking to Russian
Comey
ambassadors.
actually went on TV and boasted that they entrapped Flynn. Comey basically said we needed to get Flynn, but we normally couldn't get him because in the White House you have to go through the White House counsel. But we knew that things were a little chaotic in the Trump White House in the first term. So what we did is we sent a couple of guys acting like they were not up to anything. They just want to ask him a few questions to clear a few things up. And of course, Flynn thinks these guys are on his side. They're just trying to sort something out. He cooperates, and boom, they go after him.
Wait a second. So a couple of police officers acted like they were on your side, and then you lied to them, and they charge you with a crime. This is like every JCS video on YouTube ever. Welcome to the real world.
Wait a minute.
This guy is a general. How does he not know how the freaking police work? Seriously?
Look.
Just for the audience, kind of says responsibly. If you lie to the FBI or if you lie to police officers about things, you could be charged with crimes. It doesn't matter if they're trying to be your friend. They're trying to get you to admit to a lie. That's the whole purpose of law enforcement.
Hold on.
If you don't believe creating SOPs can take seconds instead of hours, you haven't tried Scribe.
SOP, you're talking about standard operating procedures?
How Scribe users are saving serious time every single week. Our Scribe users
How many goddamn standard operating procedures are you fucking writing?
Morgan said. I've been using this documentation software for a few months now, and it has completely transformed the way
I always find like these advertisements for like these AI softwares just like completely fucking useless. Like the use case for them at this point is just like marginal bullshit. Like I get a lot of advertisements for Grammarly, and it's like, oh, we got a tone editor, and you can like it tells you can like reformat your email to reflect a different tone. I get like some people might struggle with that, or whatever, but like, I mean, just write a regular fucking email. Is it really that goddamn hard? Or like this thing, like you're gonna use this thing to write standard operating. I need a whole software platform to write some standard operating procedures. How many goddamn standard operating procedures am I writing? And like, how often am I gonna fucking use that thing? I don't know. Seems silly to me. All right. Well, anyways, we're gonna wrap that up for tonight. I'll probably pick this up tomorrow. Hopefully finish my gun. Well, no, I probably won't finish it. I have the legs to do still. I have the weapons to put together. And then I have his like jetpack thing, and then I have the base that it comes with. It's like a little display base, which is kind of cool. So probably working on that the next at least 2 different streams that I do. But we'll wrap up this debate. I'm sure it's gonna be more of the same bullshit. So, but that's the name of the game, unfortunately. That's how our politics is at this point. All right, guys. Good night and good luck. I love you.